Hey everyone. Welcome to an unusual stream. We're here on a Wednesday afternoon, break in tradition, because I had some stuff I just had to share and I couldn't figure out a good time to do it. And I just wanted to share the experience of a certain news article I read while researching my upcoming video on Timcast IRL because it is, wow, one of the funniest articles I've ever read and one of the weirdest examples, let's say, of journalism that you will see. And we're going to give it a few minutes, let some people show up so we're not just jumping straight into it. Of course, I'm going to say hi to Zoe B in the chat, who I shared a few excerpts with her a few days ago, and she can probably confirm that it is, yeah, something else. And I'm going to need some expertise from someone who has good knowledge and experience with the English language because choices are made, decisions were decided. See, I'm not great with English myself sometimes, but this is an article that supposedly was written by a journalist, had an editor, and then published, and somehow is still up, as far as I can tell, with no revisions, and is just an absolute, just mess. I again, I want to give this a couple of minutes to get as many people in before we start because it starts off ridiculous just from the jump. So we're gonna have a few minutes of just like listening up, getting ready, steeling ourselves. I feel great. Just to talk about myself for a little bit. These last couple of days have been very rough. I've had a series of migraines, which is something I've been dealing with pretty much my whole life, but they seemed to clear yesterday, which I was very grateful for. And this morning I felt so good. It's one of those things where I realize I feel my best and I feel happiest with my life and the world when I am just coming out of my migraine state. And that's where I am right now. So if I sound happier, it's because I am happier. And it's just nice to not have to feel like I have to lie down. So I guess this is good timing, right? Also, no one be too concerned with my health. It's a condition I've had for a while, and it's not like something that knocks me out constantly. It's just every couple of months they crop up, and every year the bad ones come. And it was just the bad ones recently. So, hey, things are good, and we're going to talk about a silly article. What a fun way to spend your Wednesday afternoon, right? Let me just pull up the article before we begin, and I'm gonna, well, no, let's do the preamble and then I'll bring it up because I want people to read it with me, I guess, so we're all going the journey together. But some background. The upcoming video I have on Timcast IRL, and you'll see this in the video itself, spends perhaps more time than I'd like discussing the trial for Kari Lake's gubernatorial run. Like, she was trying to challenge the results of the election. She lost. She lost fair and square. And if you watched Tim Pool's coverage, it was very much like, oh, wow, she was robbed. Look at all these irregularities, blah, 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 blah. I'll go into that in the video and explain how he's completely wrong. In one instance, he is exactly wrong, which is very unusual. But also, he didn't produce. He hired someone to produce an article. And this guy was, he goes by the name Shane Cashman. And from what I can tell, he does have a history publishing various articles on a number of different outlets to some degrees of success. Not so much recently, and he seems to be doing a lot of work for Tim Pool right now. Not great. And this article is him covering the Lake trial. It's so bad. It's called gonzo journalism, and for those who aren't familiar, that's when a journalist inserts themselves into the story, and it's a very subjective look at something. But ideally, it provides a look that still informs the reader. You learn about the subject. You see like a man on the street not even man on the street, a witness on the scene providing their firsthand account of this trial that's happening. Like someone just said in the chat, it's like Hunter S. Thompson. But this, ironically, will not give you a better understanding of the trial or the Kari Lake situation or anything. What it will do is make you wonder how a piece of writing can be published that is both factually wrong and honestly embarrassingly written. So it's a pretty long article. We're going to probably go through all of it. There are a few sections I may skim over because they're not super interesting. But it's, God, it's something else. So I guess we should just go into it. If we still have time and I'm feeling energetic, we could even read some of his other articles. He has one on Kanye West, or I should say Ye West. I read the first few paragraphs of it, and it kind of blew my mind. And I realized if I'm going to read it, I should just wait to read it on stream. But it is also very, very amusing, at least from the few bits I read. So let's just pull it up. And here it is, right here. Cashman, Kari Lake, and the Invalid Ballad Department. Oh, thank you, Eacold the Warlock. I don't know if I said that right. Eacold the Warlock. Thank you for becoming a member. That's always appreciated. So yeah. As you can see in this image, you can see Kari Lake there. She's being interviewed by a bunch of journalists on the scene. Someone figured out how to do my icon in the chat. Yeah, that's a little thing members can do. And that's a good reason to join. You get to do the little blue jay icon during a live stream. I always forget I put that in there. I actually added it months and months ago, and I only told people last stream because I forgot. But here we go. Let's keep in mind the date for this. This was published on December 28th, 2022. That's going to be very relevant very quickly. And I will read this along. And also some information. Since this all happened in Phoenix, I would be curious if anyone who's actually been to Phoenix can share their experiences of the city and see if this matches what I'm about to read. I have been to Phoenix a few times myself, and I can say this does not read accurately from what it was like when I was in Phoenix. That was a couple of years ago, but, well, we'll see when we go into it. We got someone who actually lives in Phoenix, so you'll be able to speak to this, I think, very accurately. And you can let me know if there's anything here that when you hear it, you're just like, whoa, bizarre. Oh, another person. Great. 2 people in Phoenix. Yeah. Okay. Let's start reading this thing. I thought the sun would have been up by now, but it's still dark in the parking lot outside Runbeck Election Services. No one told me Phoenix decided to opt out of daylight savings in the 1960s, so it felt like a lagging sunrise wouldn't make sense until later. Even time seemed dishonest here. Now I'm going to stop it right now. It's not daylight savings time. Also the turn, even time seemed dishonest here. That's lovely. It's really... The whole thing is basically written like this, very theatrical and over the top. I don't know if I'm doing it justice, but I'm summoning some gravitas to this prose. There was a general lawlessness to this modern-looking city. The homeless occupied the night, and I saw gangs of wild dogs roam the streets. One had a water bottle crunched between its teeth. Ooh, okay, so gangs of wild dogs roaming the street. I did not see those when I was in Phoenix. Is that is that an issue? It is. I don't know if people in Phoenix sound off in the chat if you have to deal with a lot of wild dogs roaming the streets, and one of them had a water bottle. Oh no. And just to clarify, this is not written by Tim Pool. I saw a few comments that made me think that, but yeah. The building was surrounded by a tall, spiked fence at the edge of the Phoenix airport. It's hidden behind a cluster of other corporate buildings with Christmas trees in the windows. There's a strip club and a Waffle House across the street with help wanted signs. Okay, I just the juxtaposition there, where it's corporate buildings. I don't know what that means, but there is a strip club and a Waffle House across the street. It's sort of a, I don't know. The airport is also nearby, so it's next to the airport. Corporate buildings, a strip club, and a Waffle House. Uh, it really paints a picture, doesn't it? This is sort of a lawless zone, a place where just nefarious things happen. Basically, it's showing its whole hand of what we're going to be seeing here, and I love how it's written so breathlessly. And very good, Zoe. I should have you on the stream. Uh, this place is all glass and concrete, the kind of unceremonious location in which those of us who might be terminally jaded to the old world rule of law can't help but imagine the dirtiest schemes are carried out. Just wow, this sounds so nefarious, so dark, so brooding. Uh, Truly an awful spot. Hold on, I just needed to, because you could hear my things ping off, can't you? Okay. The ballot in our republic should be regarded as one of our greatest political currencies. Yet a place like Rubeck is indistinguishable from a sewage plant. The inside, for all I know, is a landfill of votes. This is why I've been waiting here before the sunrise, looking for a chance to slip through the gate and inspect the operation. No one inside was returning my calls. Wow, I just love the how the imagination takes over there too. It's like the inside, for all I know, is a landfill of votes. He never gets inside the vote counting center at Rubeck. Just to be clear here, um, if you're wondering how close he gets to any of this, but it certainly sounds like a terrible place he will never see the inside of. The intense security made me feel like the ballots inside Runebeck should be thoroughly protected, that every person's vote was safe and counted and preserved for record. But, of course, this level of security could also mean that anything can happen behind this little walled-off city where they print and count votes. Looking at it gave me flashbacks to a Washington, D.C. wrapped in barbed wire leading up to Biden's inauguration. He is standing outside a fence looking at a building that he can't get inside of. First off, I love that turn too, right? It's like this intense security makes you feel like it's secure, or maybe something nefarious is happening. Have you ever thought about that? How about security is actually a bad thing? Huh? Just lovely little turns. I love this. I just love how this guy writes. It's so over the top. Well, we actually get to the point in here in what is this, the sixth paragraph? Runebeck is central to Carrie Lake's election contest lawsuit. They printed the mail-in ballots that were sent to Arizonans leading up to the 2010 primary and general elections. On November 14th, most outlets called the race for Katie Hobbs, the current Secretary of State of Arizona. She won by 17,000 votes, a slim margin in a widely contested election. There are over 4 million registered voters in Arizona. Nearly 2.5 million of those voters live here in Maricopa County. It's nice that we got some facts here, right? Except they're wrong. For instance, he says that Runebeck printed the mail-in. Oh, no, wait, that's the mail-in ballots. Sure. The mail-in ballots actually aren't contested, according to Carrie Lake's team. One of the big issue is, some of the mail-in ballots. They actually had a lot of issue with the on-site printing ballots that were printed out at election centers, not at Runebeck. Also, I don't know if they were printed out at Runebeck, because that's where they have the tabulators. I'm not entirely sure. I'd have to double check that fact. But to call up Runebeck specifically as like the source of everything is not even accurate to what Lake's team said. They made a lot of wild claims, and a lot of them just were terrible and bad. But fun fact, we're not going to learn much about them in this article. They will be glossed over, and I'll try to address them as best I can. But yeah, let's keep going. I wanted to get eyes on what the life of a ballot looked like in Maricopa. Whether you believe our elections are secure or not, Maricopa has become a synonym for election fraud. I That's not how synonyms work, though. If you think the elections are secure, why would you think Maricopa is a synonym for election fraud, right? Because it's that's another. Has anyone else believe this? Unless you're, someone who regularly watches Timcast, I write. And this is a thing as we go through this article that makes me wonder, is this guy, does he know who he's writing for and is just kind of playing along? Or is he a true believer? It makes me wonder because some of this is written so poorly that he must not care, that he must think that, oh, this is just a paycheck, whatever. Uh, but hey, we'll have a better answer as we go along because we're like not even 10% of the way through this thing. Last night at Turning Point USA's America Fest, about 15 minutes from Runebeck, I happened to be standing beside Caroline Wren, a major GOP donor, and when she got word that the court had allowed 2 of Kari Lake's 10 election contest lawsuits to move forward to trial. Wren made excited phone calls saying phrases like chain of custody, malice of intent, tabulator printer breakdowns. Lake's team would not only have to prove there were disruptions to the election process, but that they were also intentional, from the chain of custody of the ballots, the counting, the printing, and the tabulating. I personally felt like any malfunction should be cause for concern, and that trying to prove intent was not as important as trying to root out any widespread hiccups happening throughout voting locations in Maricopa. Okay. Whew. This is a lot of stuff, right? I'm not sure why we need Cashman's opinion on this. He is not a legal expert. He isn't a lawyer. He's not talking to a lawyer. In fact, the only person he's spoken to is a GOP donor, Caroline Wren. I'm not sure why she gets a shout out, but you can see what I mean by this not offering real insight or knowledge or understanding, right? Someone just wrote, it must be great fun writing these articles knowing your audience will never call you out. Why not just go crazy? It's funny because when this was posted on, or Tim Pool linked to this on Twitter, and someone pointed out the mistake about daylight saving time not being a thing in Arizona. Like it starts in March, right? And this was written in December. And that's just an obvious factual error, but they've not corrected it. I don't think they care about facts, do they? And it's such an obvious, simple, basic fact to get wrong. And it's only gonna get worse. I continued calling every extension in the Runebeck directory. I left a message on the first number that had an answering machine, then kept going down the list, hoping someone in the ballot prison would let me in. I wonder if he said, can I go to your ballot prison? I'd like to inspect your ballot prison. I just love the idea of that. Okay. As the sun finally appeared over the horizon, I got a call from someone on Kari Lake's team saying I could meet with Lake in an hour at the Phoenix Convention Center, where AmericaFest was coming to an end. And so he's already, if we're paying attention here, he went to Runebeck, where they have the tabulation center, and just stood there. That's his journey so far. And now he's getting an interview with Kari Lake. I guess when you're on Tim Pool's payroll, you get access to cool stuff like that. And he took that cool picture that says, welcome to Phoenix. How lovely. Oh, hey, Lady Emily in the chat. Ballot prison is my favorite phrase from Hunger Games. This is like Hunger Games, isn't it? Like packs of wild dogs roaming the streets, threatening people. The sunlight bouncing off the glass buildings make the city look like a mirage. I heard meteorologists on the radio warning about air quality, begging the people of Arizona not to cook or burn wood to save the air. The meteorologist's plea conflicted with another bit of news I heard while in Phoenix. A Beijing crematorium couldn't process the dead fast enough, so as Beijing sent human ashes into the air at an unimaginable speed, Arizonans were being asked not to barbecue during the Christmas weekend. In the daylight, you can see how Phoenix is surrounded by mountains. This whole place felt like one big crater. People, people. I guess he's trying to make a point about climate change here, but what I'm wondering is why? Why did this just show up here, and why is Phoenix a giant crater? And is it really surrounded by mountains? This is a thing I don't really remember from my time there. I know there are mountains in the area, but it's like such a huge, sprawling city. I don't think it's surrounded by mountains on all sides. Is it? Um, and also a weird comparison to a Beijing crematorium. Uh, so there's a crematorium in Beijing that's very busy, while Arizonans are trying to not cook or burn wood. I mean, wouldn't Beijing be the bad place? Isn't Beijing uh, hell? Oh, someone clarified that it's basically all mountains. So yeah, I guess it is. Okay, I guess it is like a crater then, surrounded by mountains on all sides. Although it's elevated too. Anyway, great journalist. Thank you for the Phoenix insight there. Keep them coming, please. Um, yeah, I'm just thinking of the sluttle dig or the subtle dig at global warming there in this article about election fraud. Just got to get that in there. That's what journalism is. Uh, let's keep going. At the convention center, I heard people whispering that Carrie Lake was about to appear. A giant banner over our heads said, "Big Tech sucks." It felt like witnessing a parallel society. Who are mostly mocked in the big media world, from Charlie Kirk to Steve Bannon, were celebrated here at an almost WWE style level of enthusiasm. There were pyrotechnics on the main stage that could rival a Metallica concert. This was the alternative timeline. I mean, 2 nights ago I stood in some bar on the outskirts of Phoenix next to Lauren Boebert dancing on her birthday in a disco ball looking dress as a woman breathed fire on the stage. I spoke with California conservatives with unnaturally coiffed hair who were extremely kind, but also seemed as detached from the working class American as the leftists whom they detest. Ooh, that's that's a lot of writing. Um, it really reveals the perspective he's coming from, though, right? He's talking about a parallel society, but he hasn't really described the former, unless that's what he was trying to say before. The streets like run overrun by homeless and wild dogs, and over here it's like a Metallica concert where we're rocking out to Charlie Kirk. To be honest, I'd take my chance with the wild dogs. You can have your Charlie Kirk fest. I'll play with that dog with the water bottle. I have a feeling he's probably a lot nicer than you imagine. But wow, you get a sense of how embedded he is with these people. And I don't mean in like sort of the journalism sense. I mean he's like friends with these people. He's talking about his folks, his crew, and it's just wow. At least it lets you know his perspective, right? This is the angle he's coming at it from. Aerosmith's Walk This Way played as Lake entered the hall with her entourage. She wore a white dress and took photos with voters. I heard one young woman say, "She's so stinking cute." Um, I don't, that's nice, I guess. Her security brought us behind a curtain where 2 chairs waited for us. Her team told me that I don't have much time before Lake would be whisked away to her next meeting. There was a horde waiting on the other side of the curtain. It was like a feeding frenzy. Lake seemed prepared to address them all, but she also expressed that she could use some food and was probably ready for a moment of rest, which was something I can't imagine she's had a chance to find in the last few months. Perhaps years. Wow, that's intense. I'm just not a huge fan of all these details. They're extraneous. They're just a little too much. I guess you get a sense of what it's like to be backstage at America Fest, with Carrie Lake being treated like a rock star, but probably not. And just to answer that one question, if it whether or not this was the Run DMC version of Walk This Way, I'm guessing almost certainly not. I'm I wouldn't be surprised if they specifically requested just Aerosmith, okay? Just Aerosmith. We know the Run DMC one is better, but we just want Aerosmith on this one. We sat across from one another as she sipped her coffee. Her eye contact was intense, yet kind. And we're going to get to the interview section now. And this, wow, someone just used the word fanfic. To describe this as Carrie Lake fanfic is really underselling it. This is going to be one of those interviews where I really imagine the interviewer gently massaging the feet of the subject. You'll see. You'll see. Do you think someone like Katie Hobbs fears perjury? I asked, thinking about what it might be like to see Hobbs testify in court tomorrow. She had been subpoenaed. What an opening question. It's like, how great isn't your opponent a terrible person? Why not ask, like, don't you think Katie Hobbs is a criminal? Wow. She lies so much, I don't think she does, Lake said. She does, but she does fear public. But she does fear public speaking. She fears being in the same room as me. She can't communicate. She makes Kamala Harris look like the most articulate human being on the planet. She makes Joe Biden look like he's totally with it. She's not. I don't think she's a high IQ person. When we ask her questions tomorrow, she is going to panic. She is trying to back out of this. Just like a spoiler alert, Katie Hobbs did not testify. I forget the reason why, but there was like some exception that was made and she was not forced to testify because I don't know, she just wasn't a relevant witness or something. But it's very good that we're getting this section of the interview anticipating something that won't happen. Next question. Are you surprised that the media is framing it like all of your lawsuits were tossed last night? Again, so gentle. No, I'm not surprised. Even Charlie Kirk read the headlines and he said, "Oh my gosh, did it get dismissed? The way you read the reports, it makes it look like it all got dismissed. We are going to trial in an election case that will have huge implications. I pray to God that we have a judge that is willing to hear what we have to say." What's funny is she had 8 different claims and 6 of them were dismissed. My favorite one of the dismissed claims is that she was objecting to a specific part of laws related to elections in Arizona. And this was a law that was written in 1991. And it was dismissed on the grounds the judge said you had ample time to challenge this before the election, which is true. If you're upset with how a law was written in 1991, you probably should have challenged it before the actual election and not just when you lost. But yeah. Next question, Cashman asks, how do we even trust the justice system? I asked. Everything is so corrupt right now, Lake said. Woof. A lot of people are really bankrupt of hope, I said, and they don't know how to even trust ballots your team's examining today. How do we know if this is a process we could trust? Really just so sycophantic. Do we really get random ballots, Lake asked, or is somebody on the inside picking ballots? I wish I could tell people that this is going to be 100% fair, that we're really going to get justice here. What I do know is that we can't walk away and say, the system is screwed up, right? We're screwed. Someone just asked, so where is she now? Haven't heard much, QUA. Maybe that needs something. She's doing nothing but crying about her loss at this point. She lost this court case. Spoiler, I guess. She is not the governor of Arizona. There's some people are talking about maybe Trump's gonna name her as his VP pick if he were to get the nomination. We will see if he gets the nomination at all. But yeah, she seems like a strong candidate. She's a loser who is very, very sad. Which ship is this story about? It's not a shipping story, but it's about the Carrie Lake trial where she tried to overturn the results of the gubernatorial election in Arizona. All right, let's go back to the article. I told her that I appreciate how rare it is to see someone fight against the system, especially from someone who used to be inside the corporate media, because we should all want to ensure transparency in our election system and our government at large. That is clearly not a question, but it's also just a great example of how wonderful Carrie Lake is. Oh, someone thought this was a made-up story? No, this actually happened. This is a guy describing his experience covering the Carrie Lake trial. He wrote this for the Timcast website. Okay. I'm not going to lie to you, she said. I've had days where I just go, I'm tired, but I can't walk away. I can't say to the children, good luck, I had a great life. I had freedom in America. Good luck and enjoy the communism. I love the idea that's what she said too. Good luck and enjoy the communism. That would be solid advice. Is that what keeps you pushing forward? I asked. It's the people reaching out to tell me that they didn't get to vote on election day. They say, I don't even think my vote counted. Please don't stop fighting. The establishment doesn't care about you, though, so why should we think they'd care about us? I asked. Well, they picked a fight with the wrong person, Lake said. I've had a lot of conservatives reach out to me and say, just walk away and then we'll get behind you on the next election. But I don't think they understand. I'm not in politics because I want to be a politician. I didn't go in this to go, oh, I'm going to work my way up the ladder and move into bigger political positions. I don't want to be a politician. I want to get in and root out corruption, secure our border, and turn our elections around so that every Arizonan can be certain of their vote. If they're trying to dangle over me you're not going to have a political future because of this, I don't care. Did you ever think you'd be the counterculture? She laughed. That's, wow. I feel like these questions are to set up rants like this about how awesome she is and how she's the true fighter and champion. And don't the kids who apparently don't want communism can look up to her. And also another thing I don't like about this was an article about his experiences, and now he's just transcribing an interview. And it seems like we're getting the whole thing. Like, please edit it down. Just take a few relevant quotes, not the, I asked Kari Lake, why is she so awesome? And then here's her full response on how awesome she is. It really just reads like PR. And like that last question there, or the last one I read, I think there are a few more. Did you ever think you'd be the counterculture? Wow. Yeah, this really is the reluctant savior act. Are you telling me a middle-aged mom is counterculture? Yes, I said. People who take risks are somehow counterculture today. People who question things that others tell you not to question are counterculture. Belief in God and rejecting nihilism is counterculture. I'm pretty sure the vast majority of Americans believe in some God right now. Atheism is not the dominant culture in the U.S. Maybe he just doesn't like secularism, though. Someone like Kari Lake would not have been on my counterculture radar years ago. I personally don't have a counterculture radar, so I can't speak to that. But today, it's a lot less about one's appearance than it is about what one is willing to say in public. Consequences be damned. So this really stopped being an interview and he's just hyping her out now. But, well, here's a question. How do you see an election going forward? And wow, look at the size of that response. Whew. I'm trying to tell other Republicans who don't want to come out and say our elections are rigged that they need to start looking at our lawsuit. Read the 70 pages. If we don't come out and face the truth that our elections are a joke, it really makes me wonder how long they have been doing this stuff. We have fake news, we have fake phony elections, and we have fake corrupt installed government. And when you look at the facts, you find this to be the truth. Anything the media and social media doesn't want us talking about are the biggest issues. They didn't want us talking about COVID. I got canceled for putting out information on ivermectin. I got sued for sharing information from doctors. They don't want us to talk about Ukraine. How the money going there is being laundered and funneled through our political system. Can't talk about that. Anything they don't want us talking about should be the hugest red flag. Here's what I like when people talk about stuff is if they get specific. This is just like a grab bag of every sort of ridiculous, absurd right-wing conspiracy theory, evidenced by nothing. But, if you go to, like, say, Alex Jones, you'll probably get lots of talking points that aren't based in reality, but will affirm these ridiculous positions. But I can't help but keep going back to this article supposedly covering the news, just like giving her an uncritical platform. What is the difference between just giving Kari Lake a microphone, asking her to give a speech, and then airing that, and then transcribing that, I guess, and putting it in the middle of your article? There's no interview here. There's no challenging. There is no, like, delving deeper into any subject. It's that episode of The Simpsons where Mr. Burns is running for office and Lisa's forced to ask him the question, your campaign is like a runaway freight train. Why are you so popular? And then he just gives this stump speech and everyone just sort of like applauds, or at least, it's a stage thing for the media. That's what this is. This isn't journalism. This is PR. It's embarrassing. I'm sorry. This is gonzo journalism. That's what it's labeled as on the Timcast website. And it's such a long interview. Look at this. I call I call them the reality fabricators. I said that's how he responds to her long diatribe. But he adds some more context, I guess. In the past few days, there have been new Twitter files released about how the FBI colluded with Twitter to tamper with reality. He's just filling in the blanks for her, and like, oh, God, this is frustrating. The JFK files were released, which seem to confirm the CIA assassinated JFK. They didn't really confirm that. And somehow this news story was either so obvious no one was surprised enough to talk about it, or, more worrisome, no one cared about it save for a few of us. So forgive me for not extending grace to any government-run institution that swears to the American citizens that everything done behind spiked fences in drab, dystopian-looking buildings at the edges of strange and sad cities is totally, absolutely, verifiably immaculate. Ooh, that's a sentence. Look at how long that sentence is. Ooh, so many adjectives. I don't care who contests elections. Trust in our institutions has collapsed. The so-called experts that were propped up on TV through COVID have been proven dangerously wrong. So wrong that I believe they should be held accountable for the death and damage to the American people. We've also seen major institutions from the White House to the corporate press suppress breaking news like the Hunter Biden laptop. They were quick to label many of us conspiracy theorists. Yet 2 years later, they finally admit to the laptop's reality and to the lack of vaccine effectiveness. But we aren't absolved. We're still demonized. We're still put on lists. Thank you, Media Matters. He just picked up the ball. It's like she went on a rant with like a lot of baseless conspiracy theories, and then he just like decided, oh, and here are a bunch of other ones she didn't mention. Isn't it obvious how we're being persecuted? I thought this was about the Kari Lake trial. I really did. But instead we're getting like a deep dive into the psyche of Mr. Cashman here, and sort of the broader conservative anxiety that's out there over these vague things that are definitely out there, but, you know, not really. It's all very woe is us, isn't everything bad? He can't decide if he's writing lit fic or tweets. Very true, Zoe. But here, the interview is still going on, believe it or not. Oh, God, this is such a long part of the article. Remember how he was supposed to cover the trial? He's still interviewing Kari Lake. I've been reading this thing for 30 minutes. This election case is so important, Lake said, and even the people who are leaving us, I want to grab them and say, I know you don't believe in this, but I'm doing this for you and your future as well. I worry about elections going forward. If we don't win this on Thursday, I'm going to keep pushing. We're not going to take a loss because I know we are right, and I will push it to the Supreme Court. Donald Trump did something amazing. He brought we the people back into the White House. Our movement is all about we the people. It's not about me. It's about reclaiming our country. We the people need to be in charge of the government, but people are going to stop voting because we have banana republic-style sham elections. That's why this is the fight of our time. And, wow. So when she says we the people, she's obviously not talking about the majority of people, because the majority of people didn't vote for her. Of course, she wouldn't say that. And this is the problem. When you keep talking about election insecurity, that is probably going to depress the vote, as we see brought up here by this not real question, but at least a statement. I'm fighting the urge myself to keep from not voting. Wait, I'm fighting the urge myself to keep from not voting. Okay, he's got an urge to not vote. I don't know, that's a little awkwardly said. Maybe he's quoting himself there, but I somehow doubt it. Well, I mean, he is literally quoting himself. I just mean, I don't think he's too worried about changing around the quotes a little bit to make them a little more smooth. We have to try and keep the hope, Lake said. I see what you're up against. It seems immovable. Oof, getting some doomerism here. So much interview. David and Goliath, she said, but it's not just Democrats versus Republicans. It's a uniparty. There is a lot of corruption on both sides. This is about stopping Trump. Don't fool yourself. Trump is America first. They can't have him in office. They're really trying to push DeSantis. He's great and fine. He's in his 40s. He's 10 years younger than me. He can wait. Trump is going to get in there and root out corruption. He's not bought and paid for. There are people already surrounding DeSantis. I hope he uses great discernment when he looks around and sees who is trying to weasel their way into his world. Who created DeSantis as governor? Trump. I do, however, believe at the end of the day that Ron DeSantis will be a good and noble person. I'm just kind of overwhelmed how this has gone from an interview, and now Carrie Lake is trying to cheer up Cashman here. DeSantis has yet to announce a run for the White House, but he's become an establishment favorite, which, despite his strong stance against COVID tyranny, still gives me pause. You know the Lincoln Project supports him? I asked Lake. That's a problem, she said. That's what I'm trying to say. He needs to do a bit of a gut check and say, whoa, the wrong people are surrounding me. What he really needs to do is step forward right now and say, I am not running. I will not run against President Trump. Trump helped me, and I'm going to help him because we need him back. We need him back in office. If you have limited time to interview a governor about her trial, I feel like you should stick to those facts instead of talking about Ron DeSantis and how great Trump is, and maybe Trump will save us all. I am very confused at how this interview is operating the way it is, aside from the fact that it's obvious PR and not real journalism. Even if she's not governor, she talks like one, and I can appreciate that she's willing to call out her fellow Republicans, even ones that did a lot of good during the last few years, because there are still some questionable alliances DeSantis has made and continues to make. No matter how much you might like a politician, it's crucial that we always apply pressure to those we vote into office. That's true enough, but pressure to do what, I guess, is the real issue here. But that's probably the best paragraph we've read so far. Damning with faint praise. Okay, good. We're finally done with that interview. Wasn't that the longest interview? That must have been every word of that, just transcribed and dropped into the article. That annoys me. Just take a few choice quotes and move on, please. Although I made that line about how she talks like a governor. Like, what does that even mean? She spreads baseless conspiracy theories, just like a governor I want. Outside the convention center, I was greeted by a pair of Jehovah's Witnesses. They handed me a card with a QR code to their website in which I could read the Bible in any language. The sign between them asked, "When is peace?" So, that's a detail. I asked them if they had saved the souls of any political junkies yet. They told me they don't get involved with or talk about politics, which seemed like a lie. There's very little chance anyone can stay outside of politics in 2022. Even the Amish are political activists now. Are they, though? Where are the Amish publicly advocating for anything? But you got to commend these Jehovah's Witnesses for even attempting to keep neutral. These are the same people go knocking door to door to save your soul from the end of the world. Meanwhile, there's a convention center packed with my fellow political junkies going on and on about the end of society. What is that? What is that paragraph? First of all, you don't have to commend Jehovah's Witnesses for going going door to door, and I just don't know why this is here. I don't know why this whole section is here. I ran into a Jehovah's Witness. I asked them a question, and they were like, I want to stay out of it. So I put them in the article. They want to save your soul from the end of the world, and now we have people talking about the end of society. It's like parallel, but not really parallel because it doesn't overlap whatsoever. It's just a mess, isn't it? It's an absolute mess. Yes, Zoe, you summed it up. Bad. It's bad. But we're going to keep going. It gets worse, believe it or not. I just read you probably the best section because it's mostly just transcribing an interview. And there's only so much that can go wrong when you're just transcribing it. It is very boring and very PR-like. But when we get into his prose, that's where it sings. It sings. I showed up to the courthouse on the first day of the trial at 4 a.m. One of Lake's attorneys warned me that it's a very small courtroom with limited seating, and he heard that a few other journalists would be arriving at 5 a.m. Ah, see? So he arrived an hour early. Very, very clever. It's a nice looking courthouse, though. I've had to go to various courthouses here in Toronto, and they don't look that nice. They're older buildings, though, and I think they have more character than this, but I don't know. I think for a modern building, this looks pretty cool. It seems like it would be fitting in a desert, I guess. That's to the side, though. The desert is extremely cold in the dark in December. At around 4:30 a.m., a woman was dropped off and walked up to the courthouse steps. My presence surprised her. I don't think she was used to seeing someone outside the court at this ridiculous hour. Someone mentioned that the grammar, the desert is extremely cold in the dark in December. That is a hell of a sentence, right? I probably looked homeless, backpack and oversized army jacket. Is he one of the homeless who was running the streets in Arizona? Or Phoenix, rather? She was a data entry employee wearing a Christmas sweater. She carried a tray of treats she baked for an employee party. She thought I was with the construction crew, but I told her I was here to see the Carrie Lake trial. That can't be here, she said. Nothing ever happens here. Well, other than the suicides. The suicides, I asked? By the way, if you notice, we're still not at the trial yet. He's outside the courtroom waiting for the trial to start. The pacing is driving me crazy here. I thought this was about the trial. But there you go. Someone called this a meat stinking cute. A very weird meet cute. If you meet someone on the steps to a courthouse and like, let's talk about the suicides. I should also say that Cashman is married, so it's kind of weird. Don't ship him with this random data entry person who I think deserves better. But yeah, let's talk about the suicides. She pointed through the dark entrance into the lobby where there's a ledge up high over the metal detectors. They'll jump off the top floor right there and die. They kill themselves when they don't like a ruling, she said. We've had some seizures, too. The website said Lake's trial is here. I hope I have been waiting here for nothing, I said. Carrie Lake should have stayed working in the news, the woman said. It's all a sham. But she went on to tell me that she had zero trust in the judicial system. I feel like we should be more talking about the suicides here, but anyway. She's had a front row seat for years, seeing the judges only care about the next election. She told me she thinks Phoenix is a city of deadbeat dads, and the courts do nothing to help anybody other than themselves. Now I had this image of deadbeat dads with gangs of wild dogs demolishing this pretend desert city. That image, deadbeat dads with gangs of wild dogs demolishing this pretend city, pretend desert city. Oh, aren't you just, aren't you glad we're reading this, everybody? Oh God. What a great sentence. What a great story. I feel like I'm learning so much about the trial here. You can see why in my video, this article only takes about 2 or 3 minutes. And I tell you, I had to cut so much stuff because I just loved reading this thing. It's the most gonzo of gonzo journalism. Okay. She said she's worried about the children and the homeless and the veterans and the fentanyl coming over the border. And what else? Just a rule of thumb, the more ands, A-N-D, you add to a sentence, the weaker it gets. It sounds like a child talking about it, right? And yeah, use commas, as someone just said. Just use a comma. Just use a comma. And if you're upset that as a writer, people get paid money for this, I will have a fact at the end of this article that will make you furious. Absolutely furious. But I'm keeping that one in my back pocket till we get to the end. I hate politicians, she said. She told me Carrie Lake was just another Trump, and she couldn't stand Trump. You know he bought both his wives from Ukraine? She asked. Oof, I don't like the data entry clerk now. I don't know if that's true, I said. You don't? You don't? I think I know if that's true. I'm not doubting that they've only married him for his money, but I don't think he's purchasing them like they're objects. But here we go. Someone just asked, what is the point of this article? What is the point of this section where he's talking to a data entry clerk about wild things? I guess he's trying to give you what the average person in Arizona thinks. I don't know. Is this really helping you understand the Kari Lake situation at all, though? He did, she yelled. He bought Malia from Ukraine or someplace like that. I didn't have the heart to tell this woman that she just confused Obama's daughter's name with Trump's wife's name. Okay, that's very kind of him. So how do you feel about this election lawsuit, I asked, pointing at the courthouse. Glad we got to the point here. I don't vote, she said. I only voted once in my whole life. She said it was for Obama, and she regretted that too. She looked to be in her mid-40s. Well, give 'em hell, she said before going into the courthouse. I felt a split second of warmth escape through the doors. Ooh, doesn't that just fill you with something, I guess? A split second of warmth. What does that hint at? Is it some kind of, I don't know, is it like a devil's inferno there? Or is it the warm comfort of a mother's embrace? We'll find out soon enough, won't we? Two pews face the judge's bench. We have just started the trial, by the way. Look at how far we've come before we actually got to the trial. This is how much you had. I do this in the video too, but I'll do it here as well. This is how much you have to read before you get to the actual trial. And the thing is, it would have been fine if all that information was filled with like details, like what were the claims, what got thrown out, and why was it thrown out. But no, it just, or even setting up which specific questions are going to be asked in this trial. What does Kari Lake say? We got a lot of that. But what does Katie Hobbs say? What does her team think about this? He doesn't talk to them. He's just there to do PR for Kari Lake. Okay. Two pews faced the judge's bench. The courtroom's maximum occupancy was 91, but that also included the jury, which there would be none of since this was a civil case in which the judge would decide. That's kind of awkwardly written. Which there would be none of since this was a civil case in which the judge would decide. A few too many witches, which there just sometimes when you're reading a sentence and it just kind of hypnotizes you. That's something that happens. And someone just said Tim should get an editor. He does have an editor, but the editor clearly isn't doing anything here. Two news outlets had been granted permission to stream the trial. NBC and Real America's Voice. That's not true. ABC also had a trial. Maybe they just piggybacked off a feed, but they had their own stream of the trial as well. Also, Real America's Voices. It's actually Real America's Voice. There's no S there. Just, small thing they could have gotten right, but didn't. It was interesting to see big media lined up next to an independent journalist. I should mention, we're not talking about NBC News. We're talking about the local NBC affiliate, which is not big media. That's just local news. We'll get into more NBC talk later on, though. Believe me, we will be talking about NBC a lot. All right. There were a handful of other indie journalists who sat in the first pew with me, closest to the attorneys. The room filled up quick. There were a lot of people crammed together and leaning in the hallway. I suspect a lot of these journalists were for like newspapers, maybe like small websites or whatever. I wouldn't describe them necessarily as independent, but I guess if you're not part of NBC or Real America's Voice, you just get called independent. I wouldn't consider someone who's on staff at a local paper independent because they are not independent. They are literally on the staff of a newspaper. That's just it annoys me. It's what you think indie means when to you indie is an aesthetic. It's just like someone who doesn't look like they make a lot of money and publishes for a smaller audience. That's indie. It's like, no, it's not. It's not like big media, but it's not independent either. An independent journalist is someone not affiliated with a specific publication. Okay. I sat behind the attorney representing Maricopa County, Thomas Liddy. He kept doing this thing with his face where he'd smile to his team, a sort of smile that said, I can't believe we're even entertaining this bullshit political theater. I thought that was an odd face for him to make, seeing as how he happens to be the son of the man who organized the Watergate scandal. His father, George Gordon Battle Liddy, orchestrated the wiretapping, became a star of the scandal, then became a Hollywood darling, which should surprise no one who thinks there's a thin line between politicians, crooks, and celebrities. That was just an absolute mouthful of a sentence, and kind of irrelevant. he does this a lot in the article too, where he's going to try and vilify Thomas Liddy because his dad was a criminal. That's kind of scummy, you know? Like, don't do that. It's a way of like not actually learning. I mean, maybe Thomas Liddy has done some bad stuff himself, and that would be relevant. I know he's a Republican, so I'm probably not a fan of his policy decisions, and yeah, it's just kind of weird, right? Anyway, Liddy was one of three attorneys on the defense team representing Katie Hobbs, who had somehow snuck her way out of the subpoena and would not have to testify today. Must be good to be the Secretary of State. Somehow snuck her way out. You know what would be good for a journalist to do? Figure out how she did that. Like, you can't just not show up, right? Like, what reason did she give? How did she avoid having to testify? What was the explanation? Somehow snuck her way out. Just absolute lazy stuff. Do your research, dude. Also, Liddy was one of the three attorneys for the defense team representing Katie Hobbs. But he said Thomas Liddy was representing Maricopa County. There were two sets of lawyers. Lawyers representing Katie Hobbs and lawyers representing Maricopa County. They were not the same group, even though they were on the same side. And they actually took turns interviewing witnesses, although Katie Hobbs's lawyers really only asked a few questions. Thomas Liddy represented Maricopa County, though, not Katie Hobbs. You see this? You see how like the basic facts just are really being poorly handled by this guy? It is complicated, mind you. But if you're paid to do a job as a journalist to cover a story, I don't know, I feel like you should be getting these facts right. And wow, he's just like dropping the ball so easily. The defense had about 15 people taking up the pews. Also, I don't know if I would call them pews. What would you call them? I'm tempted to say benches, but then like the bench is like a very specific legal thing, like the judge takes the bench or whatever. I don't know. Pews just has a religious connotation that seems weird to me. But that's just a minor writing point. I'm not really criticizing that. They carried legal pads and dangerously heavy books about the Constitution. I heard them comparing which private schools they went to as children, trading pedigrees and zip codes. One of them smelled like they bathed in Neosporin. Okay. I'm glad to know that one of them smells like Neosporin. Also, it's weird, like, if they were on the same defense team, I feel like they would know each other. Like they'd be part of the same fear. Oh yeah, maybe the religious connotation is on purpose. Maybe it would be incompetently done. But that would match the rest of the article, right? And someone else is saying they call them pews at work, I guess. I don't know. Seriously, can someone tell me what this article is supported to be about? It's been listening to this for like 5 minutes and I still don't know what the fuck is happening. Okay, Chris, I'll give you a quick rundown. This is about Kari Lake's trial to overturn the results of the election in Arizona. It's doing a very bad job of presenting that. But yeah, the whole idea is this dude is there in person covering the Kari Lake trial where she tried to prove that there was election fraud and it didn't work out so well for her. It's just sour grapes because she's a loser of the election. And someone just pointed out, journalists aren't supposed to speculate on facts. They find them out. That's exactly right. No one's interested, unless you're like an op-ed, and like that's not really journalism, or at least it's a kind of journalism. It's more punditry, really. Yeah, this is just bad. Lake's attorneys were two older men, Brian Blem and Kurt Olson. Wait, I thought it said it was 3 people who were representing Lake. Oh, no, wait. I got Lake and Hobbs mixed up. Apologies. Yeah, Brian Blem and Kurt Olson, who didn't seem to have the same kind of artillery as the defense. The difference in personnel reminded me of a way a modern pop song might have 20 different writers and an old rock and roll song with just a handful of members. What does that mean? What does that mean? I guess they're trying to say like the members wrote the song, but you know, there's a lot of bands where they just had one member write the song, or maybe just one or two. But he didn't say they wrote it. He just said a handful of members. Wow. He said that on the podcast as well. So there's a clip of him saying it, and it doesn't get any better. It's just such a weird point to bring out. Blem looked like the Big Lebowski in a suit. It wasn't just that he had long, shoulder-length hair, but the way he carried himself was also similar, like he'd be more at home at a Dead concert than a courtroom. My initial reaction to him was that this guy was too carefree and nonchalant for the judge, but this quickly became his appeal in contrast to Lydianko's stuffy, repugnant smugness. Repugnant smugness, that's cute. Blem's partner, Olson, walked in with a stack of heavy boxes and dropped them at the feet of the defense attorney with a loud thud. We all felt in our feet. We all felt in our feet. These, I believe, were the exhibits to be entered into evidence. I'm not doing these guys justice. Well, particularly Blem, who is just a very funny guy to see. He didn't exactly, he didn't fill me with confidence. If he had been my lawyer, I would be worried. He didn't seem to really have it all together, I guess. He seemed like a parody of what people think some kind of outlaw lawyer is. Carrie walked into the courtroom with her husband and took a seat in the pew behind me. I advise everyone to find the live stream and listen to them carefully to form a verdict in your own mind, which apparently is better. It's better than reading this article. Actually, you probably would get a better understanding of the trial than reading this thing. Or just read a news article in it, geez. I actually have some good articles that will be included with the video if you're curious to how this trial played out in the eyes of someone who isn't this guy. The following, in my opinion, are the major malfunctions exposed on day one. There were absolute disruptions in wait times and tabulations on election day. These disruptions are nothing compared to what I believe is the most damning evidence of mass error in the election system. There were 19-inch ballots printed on 20-inch paper, which caused tabulators to reject votes. There were no proper security seals on the ballots, which were stored at 6 of the examined voting sites, and there seem to be lapses in chains of custody and number of votes from drop-off locations up to voting stations. Take all that information, and now if you're thinking of yourself, I really am looking forward to learning more about all this stuff, I will spoil this right now. We aren't going to be learning any more about any of this information. Maybe a few fleeting references to it, but we're going to get very little on like the concrete details of what these claims mean. We're going to get nothing of the response from Maricopa County to any of these claims are. They're just dropped off here and kind of easily and conveniently forgotten about. If you'd like, I can explain why they're all bogus. I did take some time to understand this stuff. But for instance, I'll go through it very briefly. The 19-inch ballots printed on 20-inch paper, which caused tabulators to reject votes. That happened. But you know what happened afterwards when they were rejected from the tabulators? They were then duplicated on like the proper size ballots, and then they were read by the tabulators. So all those votes got counted. There was absolutely nothing there. And this affected less than 2,000 ballots. There were no proper security seals on ballots, which were stored at 6 of the examined voting sites. That is speculation. There is actually documentation noting every single security seal that was put on these boxes. The only evidence that there were no security seals was one witness said he did not believe that the tape was a proper security seal. It really doesn't matter if he believed that or not. The boxes were sealed and they were documented with appropriate information verifying what security seals were there. Also, the same witness says the security seals were on the boxes, so he contradicted himself there. Not a very good claim. Also, there were lapses in chain of custody and number of votes from drop-off locations to voting stations. That's like referring to a form that didn't exist. So they made this big hubbub of like they didn't have a form telling them how many votes were picked up at drop-box locations on election day. That's because they don't create that form or they don't record that specific information because there are too many ballots. They actually count them at the tabulation center. So they do have an exact number. They just count them at a different part in the process because they need a machine to count them. They're not going to count them by hand every time they pick them up because that would take forever. But they do have forms to document chain of custody. They have observers. The election was real secure is what I'm saying. So all these claims are very easily dismissed and debunked. But It's oh yeah, someone saying they worked as a ballot checker in their county, and both of those things are completely normal. Yeah, yeah, it is true. Um, it's more fun when we see this guy talk about witnesses and testimony because he doesn't do much of it and he focuses on fun stuff. So let's move on to that. Um, Also, just someone's asking when my next sitcom retrospective is. It's going to be a little while because I just did one a week ago. Go watch the Arrested Development video again if you'd like sitcom retrospective. That video needs the support right now. Being the new, freshly born retrospective, struggling to make it in this world. All right, back to the article. The plaintiff called their first witness, Stephen Richer of the Maricopa County Recorder. He was zoomed into the courtroom from Panama City, where he was on vacation for the first time in 4 years, and he testified with the kind of dismissive attitude one might expect from someone who had to testify in court via Zoom while in Panama City. Whew, wow, really circular. When the defense got him in cross-examination, they made sure he told us he was a registered Republican. Clearly, defense Defense assumed that if they could say Richer was a Republican, it would make him appear to have a higher standing among the audience who believes this is all still Democrats versus Republicans. Yikes. I don't know. Saying he's a Republican means he would be more inclined to help a Republican win an election. Um, that's, I think, a good point to bring up. But interesting, we don't really know what was said here, do we? It's just sort of vaguely alluded to. He was on Zoom. That's what we know, and he was in Panama City. But what did Lake's team ask him about? We know he had a dismissive attitude. See, dismissive attitude, and he's a Republican. Isn't that great reporting? Richard assured the court that everything was above standard, and he worked hard to establish order and transparency. Okay, everything is fine. Did you do anything to sabotage the election? Defense asked. Absolutely not. Did you run a political action committee against Lake? That is 100% false, he said. However, that's not true. Ooh, we're getting into it now. And this is why I asked Lake yesterday if these people even fear perjury. I think the establishment hacks who get into the office rule over us as if amnesty is built into their job title. It was reported in the Arizona Mirror in November 17th, 2021 that Stephen Richer created a political action committee named Pro-Democracy Republicans of Arizona. This PAC's statement said they will fund and favor Republican candidates who acknowledge the validity of the 2020 election and condemn the events of January 6, 2021 as a terrible result of the lies told about the November election. Richard told the outlet, obviously there are some Republicans who have courageously stood up and acknowledged the truth, and there are others who haven't. We should be supporting the former. Now, let's return to the question. Did you run a political action committee against Lake? It's clearly not against Lake specifically, but rather espousing his values. Sorry, I just needed a sip of water there. I should be taking more of those, huh? The idea that this is specifically an anti-Lake political action committee is absurd. It's related to an issue, right? And I don't know how he could say this is false and present this as his information. He didn't call Lake out by name, but it's clear who he was talking about. I wish Lake's team would have pushed back on that because it could have shown that these people tap dance around the truth. No, it wouldn't have. Right? Like, that's clearly not how this works. You actually have to, if you're trying to say someone is running a political action committee against a certain candidate, it does have to be that candidate, because it could be any candidate who denies the reality of the November 2020 election or supports January 6th. But hey, this is all like this is all PR. This is also probably the deepest he goes into the testimonies, to be honest. Yeah. Later on, Blem noticed that a cable was missing from his and Olson's desk. He said it was there earlier, and now it's gone, making him unable to connect his computer to the screen to share images. Why would you include that? If the tech in a small and controlled system like a courtroom can't function smoothly, how can we trust a county-wide, statewide, countrywide election system to function properly? Oh man. If First of all, this is Carrie Lake's team who doesn't have a cable they needed to connect to something. So maybe it's on them. But second of all, my God, I've lost faith in democracy because someone couldn't find a cable during trial is just a hell of a take. An absolute ridiculous take. Sorry, just need a little more water here. Okay. Scott Jarrett, the election director, was called to the stand. Olson asked whether or not it was possible to have 19-inch ballots on election day in 2022. Jarrett said no, impossible. Blem and Olson were teeing up the fact that their inspector found 19-inch ballots on 20-inch paper, which caused a disruption in the tabulation. They discovered this problem in all 6 of the voting centers inspected. Okay, it's not whether or not it was possible to have 19-inch ballots. What they were asking was related to the definition of the printing image. That is to say, when they were printing the image onto the ballot, was that printing image designed to fit on a 19-inch piece of paper, which it was not. The reason they were printed like that, as if they were, was because of a setting that was adjusted on the printer by administrators to fix a problem because the printers were overheating and someone accidentally selected shrink to fit and then they messed up the size of the papers that were going into it. See, it's all just a ridiculous tech problem that in the end doesn't really matter because those ballots were read anyway. But this is like the biggest gotcha they've got. Scott Jarrett said there were no 19-inch ballots, except he didn't mean there were no 19-inch ballots printed. He meant the printers were not set up to print 19-inch ballots, which again is what Lake's team has to prove. They actually have to demonstrate there was intent, right? You can't just say there was a screw up, therefore election overturned. You'd have to either show it to be, for this specific trial, you have to prove intent as well, because that was the outlines of the judge. And this is also complicated, isn't it? I don't think this article is up to telling us the true story. Anyway, they called Clay Parikh to testify. He's a certified ethical hacker who looks for malicious malware in systems. Yesterday confirmed by initial assumptions. I think that's in my initial assumptions. Yesterday confirmed by initial assumptions, Parikh said on the stand. I don't know. I don't know. Get your typos right, because otherwise that's a sentence fragment. One of the attorneys representing Hobbs laughed to himself when he heard Parikh's thick Alabama accent. The attorney was a sharp-dressed man with a buzz cut. It's too bad his arrogance supersedes his confidence because he's clearly intelligent. I watched him listen intently and be quick to object at times when Blem or Olson moved into grounds of speculation. Wow, great stuff. What was the speculation? I'd be curious about. Anyway, we go right to the cross-examination. Liddy's strategy was to discredit Parikh by saying he's done speaking engagements for the My Pillow guy, Mike Lindell, which is true, by the way. He wasn't paid directly, but Mike Lindell flew him out to speak at his various conferences. Liddy cross-examines witnesses with the same blunt force his dad used with a crowbar on the filing cabinet for Watergate. Wow, what a great way to describe cross-examination. Thank you, mainstream libs and conservatives are neo-Nazis. What did I miss so far? That's a hell of a username, isn't it? You've missed a very absurd article. I've been reading it for over an hour now. We're over the halfway point. It is something else. Also, yeah, Watergate was a conservative operation. Worth mentioning. Defense. This is annoying because it skipped over the whole section where the bulk of Mr. Parikh's claims, where they're talking about the shrinked ballots, where they get him to literally admit that the ballots would still be counted, even if they were shrunk down to 19 inches, they would just be duplicated and retabulated. But forget all that, we're going straight to Heather Honey. Defense later asked witness Heather Honey, an investigator, if she was an attorney, which she was clearly not. I'm so glad he recorded that bit of information. I'm going to ask you a legal question, the attorney said. Are you aware that, that in Arizona law, a ballot is not actually unlawful if it is harvested? That is, someone who is not authorized deposits, or like what happened at Runbeck, someone inserts ballots into the stream but not into a designated drop box. Are you aware that that is not unlawful? His question alluded to her testimony about a whistleblower from within Runbeck saying they dumped 50 votes from outside Runbeck into the stream. The term in the law, Honey said in response, is it's an invalid vote. So that is all of that is one of the most meaningless things to bring out from Honey's testimony because, and this was something that kind of blew my mind. The whistleblower supposedly is someone who's only given a first name and who doesn't actually testify. But Heather Honey brought forward her testimony saying, someone who works at Runbeck told me this. Someone named Lisa or whatever told me this, which is literally hearsay, right? Like that's not... The fact that the judge allowed it is incredibly generous. If this Lisa person testified herself, that would be one thing, but it's literally hearsay. In fact, they even played a voicemail from some other random person, like Michelle. They just first names. And they played that during the trial. And I'm like, how can you do this? It wasn't even entered into evidence. It was just like, we have this voicemail. We couldn't figure out how to put it into the website, but can we play it now? And the judge was like, yeah, sure. And I was like, this judge is so generous. I guess he suspected the Lake team needed all the help they could get. Even honing in on this is ridiculous. Anyway, what they're talking about here is Runbeck supposedly allowed workers to bring in ballots from their friends and family to be inserted during the tabulation process. I don't know if that's true or not because no one from Runbeck was actually interviewed for any of this, or they weren't testifying for any part of this. They did ask people from Maricopa County if they knew about this process, if it was happening, and they all said no. As far as they're aware, this isn't a thing. Just wild stuff. It's also kind of irrelevant because they dumped in an additional 50 votes. That's not even close to affecting the outcome of the election. There was a 17,000 vote gap between Lake and Hobbs. After a court was adjourned for the day, wasn't that excited. They called 6 witnesses, and those are all the details we got. After court was adjourned for the day, I ran into the data entry lady from this morning, and we just so happened to cross paths at the spot where people jumped to their death. It's a farther jump down than I anticipated. This makes me feel like she was really an invented character, wasn't it? How's it going in there? She asked. It's interesting, I said. I think they're showing some compelling discrepancies with Maricopa's system. Kind of like how you see all the flaws in the justice system. I think there is something wrong with our elections. I can't say it's all intentional or that there is some grand plot, but it's alarming. She told me she and her daughter had been watching the live stream all day and texting each other, laughing at Kari Lake. They think this is all a charade. Pardon me. I just hope Kari Lake's lipstick isn't on that judge's ass, she said. Don't you think we should all care about this? No matter if this was someone on the left or the right? I asked, reminding her that Hillary Clinton, Stacey Abrams, and Elizabeth Warren have each vocalized concern over election integrity. If either side can only trust elections when they win, then we have a serious national wound that will never heal. We should reject anyone who rejects transparency, I said. They don't care about the working class. She agreed. I should note there's a difference between vocalizing concern and having a baseless legal case. Or trial, I should say. Would you be open to a re-election? I asked. I don't think it's called a re-election. Sure, she said. I think we should have paper ballots and fingerprints. I don't think you should be taking fingerprints of people for casting a vote. I'm down with that, I said. I wonder if a trial like this even matters to the public. We can all stare at the same video, same evidence, and still not agree on the contents. Truth has become subjective. I want to escape Arizona, she said, as if it were a first step to leaving planet Earth. And that night, she did leave the state. She flew to Montana. I checked the weather there, and it had a negative 40-degree wind chill. I could appreciate the fact that she was so eager to ditch Arizona that she chose the tundra over the desert. Wow. Okay. First of all, minus 40-degree wind chill. How cold is that in Fahrenheit? I don't know. Or in Celsius, I should say. That works out to 4 degrees. Oh, no, wait, that's not. I'm looking at this on another window. So it's about negative 40. Oh, it's the same in Celsius as it is in Fahrenheit. That is so cold. I don't think Montana was negative 40, but I imagine that she went, she probably was visiting family or something. Uh, it's kind of just such a weird thing to include in your article, where we'll see that like minor point from the honey testimony for what? How long is this? 4 paragraphs, and then we get, oh my god, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 paragraphs talking to the data entry clerk. This is what I mean by this article. It spends almost no time in the trial, and then it's like, but let me tell you about this data entry clerk I ran into outside. She was like, oh man, this place is wild. Wouldn't it be better if we had a re-election? And we were like, yeah, totally. And then she went to go off in the tundra because things are terrible in Arizona. Ah, wow. Someone asked if this was written by Tim. No, it's by a guy named Shane Cashman, who he's hired to write this, believe it or not. I'll leave it up to you to decide whether or not that was money well spent. Um, uh, yeah, someone pointed out that a tundra is a desert, just desert ice and snow. It's true. I don't think Montana is very, isn't like Montana very rocky? A lot of mountains there, I'd imagine. Um, okay, we're going to the second day of the trial here, I believe. Oh, this is a good part. The next day, my 5 a.m. taxi driver back to the courthouse kept a pistol on his lap and talked about taking DMT to open portals to God. He said he met God, and he can't wait to go back. Where's this article going? All I did was ask him how he felt about Arizona existing outside of daylight savings time. Okay, that's genuinely good. And he went on a rant about how we had to overcome the government. I thought for a minute this man might take me hostage, enlist me in some underground desert militia, and we'd be parachuting into DC in no time. He told me he's former FBI, and I couldn't tell you if he was a functioning schizophrenic or telling the truth. Either seemed plausible. Not to me, to be honest. I don't think this guy worked for the FBI. I told him I don't believe in political violence. He laughed at that and said it was the only way to bring this country back together. Oh man. Oh man. First of all, as someone who's been in a few taxis, this guy isn't totally bizarre or unusual. I've been on some weird taxi rides. Uh, I'm glad this is in the article, and I would honestly try to insert it into any sort of article I was writing if I talked to this man, just because it's so entertaining. Um, it has absolutely no news value whatsoever, and it's just such a weird thing to include. Um, Honestly, though, I think if you went to a real editor, they'd be like, "I love this, but it has to be cut out because it has nothing to do with the article. This is just like a weird thing that happened to you. Save it for like when you're getting drinks with people after work." Um, I love this anecdote though. Um, wow, isn't this the news though? Also, this is longer than his section on the Heather Honey testimony, or about as long, maybe, actually, now that I look at it. And I think if we count the paragraphs, he's dedicated more time to the data entry clerk and his cab driver than the actual courtroom testimony. Just wild to think that someone believes this is journalism. I took a seat closest to the courtroom exit because I had to skip out early to catch a flight home before a blizzard hit half the country. Uh, a man who looked like a tube of toothpaste grunted at me as if to say I should move from my seat. He didn't seem to know English, or perhaps he was mentally ill or suffering from a terrible head wound, or maybe he was having a seizure, and I couldn't tell. I think he would be able to tell if someone is having a seizure. I realized I saw this man yesterday, high-fiving and ass-slapping the defense team in the hallway. He's got the kind of made-for-TV hair and the face of an aging soap opera actor, handsome enough for TV, but not enough to be anything other than a low-budget villain. His grunting grew louder as he moved closer to me. Another journalist, a colleague of his, leaned over to translate the grunts. You're sitting in his seat, he told me. He's NBC. Like I give a shit. Oh, I said, without any plan of moving. Perhaps if he didn't grunt at me, I would have thought about giving up my seat. Now, I'm glad you're stealing that line of a man who looked like a tube of toothpaste, Zoe. I don't even know what that means. How does a person look like a tube of toothpaste? Here starts my favorite part of the article, the section where we see his just deep hatred for this local NBC reporter. I can show you what this guy looks like too. Or we'll see him at the end. Because you might be think, who is this NBC reporter? He's like a local NBC guy, I guess. Maybe I'll find him. The whole time we don't get his name because at first I thought, oh, he's trying to protect his identity. He doesn't want this dude like to be put on blast just because he happens to be covering the article. But then he posts a picture of the guy at the end of the article for some reason. Basically revealing who he is. Anyway, this is the guy. His name is Bram Resnick. Apparently, this is what a man who looks like toothpaste looks like. Does this resemble toothpaste? God, I love the question, Zoe. Cap on or cap off? Does this guy? I don't know. What kind of toothpaste does he look like? I'm not sure. One of the descriptions was aging soap opera actor. I could get that, but he doesn't look that old either. He looks like an alright looking dude, sort of a local news guy. I don't know. And is it Bram or Bram? I'm not sure. And he's got yeah, he's clearly a Sensodyne bottle. So someone only sees toothpaste. Believe it or not, this is a guy. This is a man, not a tube of toothpaste. You may have been thinking like, whoa, I feel like I need to brush right now. But no, this is political anchor reporter Bram Resnick. But again, this is a local NBC affiliate. This is like local news. They're not owned and operated by NBC in the way NBC News, would be if it were. I don't know who's on NBC News these days. I just think of Brian Williams, but I don't know if he's still with them or not. I know he had some controversies. But let's get back to this article. He really hates this NBC dude, and you're going to really feel that as the article goes on, and he decides he'll spend less time talking about the trial and more about he just hates this NBC guy. Ugh. The journalist who translated for him wound up giving his seat to NBC, an act of ass-kissing that made me nauseous. NBC smelled like stale champagne, cheap tanning lotion, and a urinal cake. I love all those smells together. Honestly, a urinal cake is the nicest smelling part of a urinal, but I wouldn't want to smell like that. But also stale champagne and cheap tanning lotion. Carrie walked in next and saw NBC, and as she walked past him, looked down at him and said, "This guy writes fantasy." He ignored her, but then chuckled to himself once she was seated. When he got up to check his camera, his shoes squeaked, and I'm sure his shoes were filled with urine. So there's a lot of urine stuff in this section regarding to this guy. I'd like to note on the second day of the trial, we have gotten about 8 paragraphs solely dedicated to ripping on this NBC dude, and shoes filled with urine is just, how does one know that? How does one figure that out? Amazing stuff. Amazing article. On day 2, I was catching onto the defense team's twofold strategy, in which they weaponize identity politics as an almost veiled threat to the judge, while also forcefully trying to discredit the plaintiff's witnesses. Is the tube filled with toothpaste or urine? Good question, Zoe. Who knows? What do you say? Is that filled with urine or toothpaste? God, I'm sorry, Bram Resnick. You deserve better, probably. I noticed that Lily evoked images of lynchings earlier in the trial to express to the judge that That was real voter suppression. And today, he used an imaginary knife to murder an imaginary victim in an effort to show the judge the horrors of political violence. I'm glad he mentioned it was an imaginary knife to murder an imaginary victim. I'd hate to see him try to murder someone with an imaginary knife and it wasn't an imaginary victim, right? Like, I've once murdered someone with an imaginary knife. Both were needless and desperate attempts to sway the emotions of a judge rather than argue the evidence and testimonies entered into court. This was cult behavior. Use identity and race as a cudgel. I wondered which intern in the pews ghost wrote those lines for Liddy. He turned to smile at his team as if to make sure they approved of his theater. Just to clarify something here. When he was doing... I didn't actually see him pantomime anything because the way the stream was worked out, it was focused on the witness. The reason he talked about a knife being used to murder someone and political violence was because someone from the Lake campaign, or I don't know if it was Carrie Lake herself, had made a comment about murdering John McCain. Like, that was the idea, right? Like, someone should stab John McCain, and that was used not as a hypothetical, but as an actual real-world example of political messaging that was used to scare people away from voting. Because it wasn't just John McCain, it was like anyone who supports John McCain should be stabbed, basically. That's why he brought it up. He didn't just bring it up apropos of nothing. And by the way, comparing this to lynchings is worthwhile because that is a form of disenfranchisement and voter suppression, like they said. Not this absolute nonsense. It is a bit theatrical, I guess, to mention lynchings, but I wouldn't say it's weaponizing identity politics so much as it is just referencing history. And if we're going to talk about voter suppression, it's good to have a historical perspective of what that actually means, right? Okay. The language would have been used to intimidate a jury, but since there is no jury, they are used to intimidate the judge. And of course, the NBC man is a regurgitating human centipede, eating up all of Liddy's sound bites. He writes them down, he tweets it, he regurgitates it on a microphone before a camera on the courthouse steps. I'd be curious to know what was actually being said by the reporter here instead of just this weird fixation on him. But I guess this is how the media spins everything. Richard Barris, a pollster with Big Data Poll, took the stand in a three-piece suit. Okay. Lake's husband leaned forward, elbows on knees, and she kept her hands clasped in her lap. Notice how the subject just kind of changed there in that sentence? That's very bad writing. Barris and his team were eyewitnesses to the disturbances on Election Day in Maricopa County. Liddy again sought to discredit the witness by showing the judge that Barris was not academically acceptable and that he had been given an F grade by 538 polling. I make my living in the real world, Barris said, as a clear indication that we are truly witnessing two societies competing for their version of reality. He questioned why 538 had become the authority in polling. NBC laughed along with the defense team. His laugh sounded like belches. That's all we're going to hear about from Richard Barris, which is an interesting thing and I think that's all we're hearing about day 2 testimony. Well, I mean, we're going to read the rest of this article, but think about that. Think about all we've read so far. And day 2 testimony went on for like 6 hours. And this is what we're getting. We're getting a weird reference to like identity politics. And we get this like applause line from Liddy that has nothing to do with his witness or evidence. But is still somehow the only thing mentioned. Yeah, and his laugh sounded like belches is a fun line. NBC hardly paid attention. It took him 20 minutes to write one tweet. I like how, I guess Cashman had been watching him for 20 minutes write out a tweet. Like, pay attention to the trial, dude. He would miss all the nuance of a witness's testimony attempting to tweet. You're complaining about him missing the nuance of a testimony because you spent all your time watching him try to tweet. He was an embarrassment to journalism. Sitting next to him made me fear that his ignorance was contagious. I got a first-hand account of how flippant the corporate media manipulates the news. Yet this man will stand in front of a cameraman, switch on his cartoonish TV voice, and tell Arizona about his version of reality under the guise of objectivity. I'm disgusted by the way NBC willfully misrepresents the reality before him. Amazing. Amazing. I love... The irony is just off the charts here. And I love how he's like complaining about their, the guise of objectivity. And he's reporting on nothing. He's reporting on them. Right before I had to leave during the lunch break, I saw NBC turn down a selfie with a fellow veteran journalist, about the same age as him, the guy who earlier gave up his chair for the man. NBC said this wasn't the time or place. His colleague said, but this is historical, and NBC scoffed at him. One of the younger indie journalists turned around and asked the other indie journalists if he could record video on his phone for his site. Also, I think it's great that this guy is leaving at lunch. He's missing all the testimony for that Maricopa County is going to bring out. Not all of it, mind you. There was some he was present for, but he didn't include that in his article, I guess. Wonderful. Some of us still believe in the rule of law, NBC said. I had enough. Who cares what this guy has to say? I shouted as the defense walked past out the exit. People turned around to see what I was going on about. I thought a public shaming was in order. Someone had to say something. What's the worst they'll do? Drag you out? I told the younger journalist. NBC took out his phone and pretended I wasn't there. That's some good public shaming. I stared at him to see if I could find any indication that he was a clone. Maybe I could find the threads of his skin suit. It's one thing to talk shit on big media all the time because they're clearly obnoxious psychopathic liars, but it's entirely maddening to see it happen in real time right next to you. This man should be ashamed. He is part of the reality fabrication, and he needed to be exposed in the courtroom. Amazing. I'm expecting someone to just start applauding now. I saw that NBC wanted my seat as I was leaving, but there was an elderly man leaning in the doorway, listening intently. I left my notepad on the seat just in case NBC tried to swoop in, and I told the old man he should sit there. Wow. This article is just going places. It's no longer about the trial. This is about Shane Cashman standing up to NBC in the midst of just, I don't know what he's trying to expose him as. Horrible liar. Of course, his evidence of that is he watched him tweeting at one point, and then later he would say stuff in front of the camera. That hasn't happened yet, but he's tired of it. Whoa. The judge would deliver his ruling on Saturday, the day before Christmas. He ruled in Hobbs's favor. I asked Carrie Lake what she thought of the trial's media coverage and how the defense bashed witnesses over the head with their lack of institutional credentials, and also lack of evidence. I am absolutely appalled by how our local news covered this case. It's as if they weren't even sitting in the same courtroom. I think it's important to expose the 19-inch ballot image manipulation story, the way they clumsily concocted the new shrink to fit story, which Jarrett earlier denied happening, even when his own counsel when asked. That is not good. That's what happens when you just reproduce a statement. You should probably get a better quote next time. That was a major tactical blunder. It exposed the lie. The lie also compounds with so many other contradictions. For example, Jarrett claimed he did not tell anyone about this before yesterday, even though they supposedly knew about it a few days after the election. They say it only occurred at 3 vote centers, when Clay found it at all 6 vote centers that he inspected ballots from. And they say it happened in 3 prior elections, when tampering with a ballot is a crime. Duplicating a ballot is actually part of the process and not a crime. And no one is tampering with the ballots. They're printing them, and there was an issue with the printer. Wow. But it's just reprinting her statement. This is, it's so maddening. I thought Barris answered the line of questioning that was meant to discredit him very well, and then we got to see the difference between somebody who has true experience and someone who is just a creature of academia when their so-called expert took the stand. Mr. Meyer, pardon me, Dr. Meyer. Also someone who wasn't mentioned in Cashman's article, by the way. We saw him answer questions, seemingly flouting his academic credentials, and then when my attorneys cross-examined him, he realized how little those type of credentials matter. His study lacked due diligence, solid methodology, and basic common sense. Instead of fairly interviewing me, they're trying to instigate and disparage and denigrate me. It's all politics. They never do that with a liberal or even an establishment Republican. I do plan to appeal this, as we have proven that our elections are run outside the law. We must restore faith in our elections for the sake of our country. The mainstream media's failure to cover this fairly has done nothing but open regular people's eyes to how corrupt they are. The trial has opened their eyes to how corrupt the entire system is. How does it feel to be the counterculture indeed? We have also since learned that Hobbs attempted to sue Lake for legal fees, which the judge recently dismissed as well. We're almost done here. We're just wrapping up. It's become taboo to question the sanctity of elections, but I feel like this could be the one issue for everyone to band around. You shouldn't be labeled a conspiracy theorist for questioning the established order, despite the order proving itself again and again to be a bureaucratic hell in which there is rarely any accountability. Pointing out that there might be flaws in the system gets me the same looks that I might get when pointing to the sky and talking about chemtrails. You might think it's easy to write off something so absurd, but we do see the sky with chemicals coming out in favor of chemtrails. A late one. We needed that. We do it out west to promote rain during droughts. We've been doing it since the Vietnam War, when our forces attempted to create rainstorms to make mudslides to slow down the Viet Cong. And just recently, China admitted to manipulating the weather. Just because it seems crazy to you doesn't mean it's not a reality. Chemtrails is a really fun conspiracy because it mostly involves people looking up at the sky, pointing at contrails, which is just like water vapor in the sky that planes leave, and saying that they're chemicals. Oh man. There are it's not quite the same as cloud seeding, which is like a thing, right? The chemtrail conspiracy believes there's like a global effort to change weather patterns, to damage crops and like depopulate the earth. It's just a wild thing. And we went from elections to chemtrails in a single sentence. That's right, Zoe. That's the sort of article this is. There are people who genuinely believe in chemtrails. I wish it was a joke, but anyway. I have a friend in Savannah, Georgia, who takes photos of what she thinks are chemtrails. One day, a college kid walked up to her and asked what she was doing. She told him about the chemtrails crisscrossing the sky. He asked her why she even cared. According to her, he even seemed upset that she would be bothered by the idea of chemtrails. He gave a face like, so what if they're dosing the atmosphere with chemicals? I think for some people, when it falls out of the sky, it's easier for them to take their prescriptions. I believe the same blasé attitude, is widespread when it comes to our defunct elections. More people should be concerned about the things we blindly trust. Whew. There's still a little more to the article to go, but the funny thing about saying that we blindly trust elections is the idea that they can't be verified. The testimony from the Maricopa County team is just absolutely thorough. I go over this a little bit in the video, but they provide so many documents, so many points of election security that it's just if you were worried about the safety of elections and whether or not votes actually get counted, it will reassure you. You'll realize, like, damn, these are really secure elections. And I think it's important to hold mainstream institutions to account. The problem is someone like Cashman, he isn't equipped to do that, as evidenced by this entire article where he doesn't seem to understand most of what he is observing. He spent 20 minutes watching a guy try to tweet when he was at a trial, so I don't know if he's got attention problems or just isn't an astute enough observer to hold the powerful to account. All right, let's keep going. Before I left the courthouse on day 2 of the trial, I waited for my ride to the Phoenix airport. The city, like so many cities, was surrounded by construction. I couldn't tell if the machines were building the city or taking it apart. Guess what? If it's a construction crew, it's probably not taking apart the city. It's kind of in the name, right? Construction. Anyway, everyone left the court for lunch. The old man I gave my seat to inside walked past me. Did you see what you came to see? I asked. Oh, yes, he said. And what was that? I asked. It's all a sham, he said. They're grasping for straws. Lake or Hobbs? I asked. He seemed instantly sad that I even had to ask. He said Lake was a damn circus act. I'm fascinated by the way we can all stare at the same thing and make completely different conclusions. I think the old man is onto something, everyone. Lake walked out out the court. Lake walked out the courthouse. Walked out of the courthouse? Oh, come on, guys. And towards her car. The media gaggle waiting outside like vultures mobbed her. They surrounded her, chased her, like the media asking questions. NBC ran alongside Lake, mic outstretched, repeating in paparazzi style, "Where are the votes, Kerry? Where are the votes?" He seemed so confident. I started yelling and pointed at NBC. "I love this guy. I love everything about him. I love NBC." The other journalists joined in. We were all outside the courthouse, like barking wild dogs, chanting how much we love NBC. We loved NBC's hair, his sports coat, his career, his grip on reality, and then I made sure to take a selfie with him because it felt so historical. And then they all applauded. And wow, that's how the article ends. Uh, with a bit of, I assume, fanfic. There's the photo. Uh, that's NBC, obviously, Mr. Resnick, right? Right, that's him. Um, and that's Cashman there, obviously holding the camera. So that was the article. Um, and I think this last little tableau at the end, in some ways, very much frames what this article is. He is hounding and annoying the local press, pretending they're part of the all-powerful NBC, when, again, a network affiliate is not the NBC network itself. They're like separate businesses. And he is trying to harass journalists doing a job to protect Carrie Lake. He is doing PR for her. And yeah, this is just PR. This isn't journalism. This is nonsense. But for corrections, please email corrections@timcast.com. I don't think emails can be written long enough to document all the corrections this thing would need. There was a comment section. I don't know where that is now, but maybe I just saw comments on Twitter or Facebook or something. But people liked it. In Tim Pool's audience, they thought this was a good article, which is a scary thought. Thank you, John Collins. What is the subject of the next television show presentation? When will it come out? A fair question. I'm not ready to announce which show it is. Right now, in all likelihood, it'll be coming out sometime in March. Yeah, that's about all I can tell you right now. So yeah, this is the article I wanted to share. There are, now you're probably wondering, like, what was that bit of information that would make people very angry, right? Like, everyone is upset that Shane Cashman was paid money to write this article, right? Like, isn't that outrageous? I can think of something that's even more outrageous. And, let me just confirm that. Yes. So, Shane Cashman is an adjunct professor at Manhattanville College, an English professor. And this is the sort of article he writes, where there are lines like, well, what was that one we just read? Lake walked out the courthouse and towards her car. That's something an adjunct professor wrote. You're like, that's a joke, right? That's a joke. Well, here's his face. Here's a LinkedIn page. And we can see adjunct professor, Manhattanville College, for 7 years, 6 months. There you go. I've never heard of Manhattanville College before. It is a did he Photoshop his face or scroll compare? Oh, that's not the same picture. It's not the exact same picture, but it's the same guy. I can give you more pictures of Shane Cashman if you would like. I know he's wearing glasses. Let me get his Twitter profile. That's like the one to bridge them. So this is what he looks like on his Twitter profile. These are the same guy. Also, in another article, he says he's a teacher. So there you go. If he's not, and I've gotten this wrong, and I've unfairly slandered this Shane Cashman, who says he's written for The Atlantic, Vice, Fatherly, The New York Observer, Narratively, and elsewhere, and this one who's also said, if you look at his thing, he does mention The Atlantic and Vice as well. But if it's not the same guy, I apologize to this Shane Cashman, but he does teach English, according to him. But there you go. Now, anyway, he has written. Okay. When are we getting together? Fiction read through again. I don't know. Another terrible. Does anyone have any good Republican fiction they want me to read? Because I have no idea to. I need an idea for a February video because my original idea has had to been. Hold up. Are we gonna have like an argument over this guy now? He's written for Vice, Penthouse, Atlas Obscura, The Atlantic, and BBC Trial. He covers the paranormal mysteries and true crime for Timcast. He does have real credentials, or real bylines. I read his one of the articles he wrote for the San Francisco Review of Books, or no, it was some review of books, and it was silly. But yeah, Republican fiction might be fun for the next. So Republican fiction might be fun for the next video. I might do that for February. But yeah, if anyone has suggestions, please let me know. And archive of our own. I don't even know what that is. As for what we're going to do on the stream, I mean, do people want me to read another article by Shane Cashman? Because that's what I was thinking of doing. Because he has a two-parter called The Case for President Ye. I read the first few paragraphs of this, and I was like, my God. I don't know if I can go through the whole thing, because it's very long. And it took me an hour and a half to read the first one. So I might skim over some things. 2025, The World Ensaved by a Virus. That sounds like a fun movie. And this was, if you look at the date, December 7th, this was all written after his appearance on Tim Pool, and definitely after his appearance on Alex Jones, because it's referenced in the first few paragraphs. So we can go through this. We might skim over a few bits because it's kind of ridiculous. I'm going to take a sip of water. In the meantime, give me your suggestions for conservative books to read for another video in the future, because I would like to do that. And I'm going to hydrate for a moment. Okay, that was a long drink of water. And now I'm thinking I might have to take a longer break. But I said we'd give this article a go, and we're gonna give this a shot. Let's just like loosen up, get ready. Oh, Zoe, I have to go eat dinner, but thank you for the wonderful stream. The article's absolutely horrible, and I loved it. Thank you so much for that. I feel slightly weird taking money for a friend, but I appreciate it. I hope you enjoy your dinner as well. And I don't know, this stream is always, of course, going to remain unlisted. If people ever want to watch them in the future, that's like a thing you can do. Can we convince Ben Shapiro to write a romance? Oh God, I wish. Someone asked if I covered the Glenn Beck dystopia novel Agenda 21. I've only covered the first book he wrote, which was what was it called? How could I forget? Oh my god, I covered two of his books actually. The first one was how can I not remember my own video? Um, this is sad. I'm googling it right now. The Overton Window. That's what it was called. It was the Overton Window that he wrote. And that was pretty bad. And it was actually part one, so maybe I should do part two 2 years later. That might be interesting. The Saddam Hussein romance novel. I've actually heard of that one. Maybe that might be interesting to check it out. The Burden of Bad Ideas: How Modern Intellectuals Misshape Our Society by Heather McDonald. Interesting. Uh, True Allegiance is a romance between Brett Hawthorne and Uncle Sam. Well, his wife does die near the end of that movie, or the movie, book. So it does speak to probably a new love in the future, doesn't it? Uh, okay, we're all going to think about what the next book I can read will be. For now, we're going to move on to this this article um, about, wow, the case for President Yi, Part 1. 2 Days with Yi on God, Exile, and Radical Love. Use of the Oxford comma, which I generally like, but now it's making me rethink my appreciation for it if he's using it. But he is an adjunct professor, so who am I to judge the professor here? And does he seriously want him to be the president of the United States? We'll find out. We'll find out, won't we? And I'm just going to take a quick note here of something. Okay. Right. No Oxford comma in journalism. It drives me insane, I guess. I mean, if I wrote it, my editor would probably take it out, wouldn't he? That's what it's like being a journalism, I guess. But this guy is not a real journalism. Have you seen the painting, The Death of Socrates? The philosopher is a calm and bold figure at the center of a scene of anguish and chaos. He reaches for the poison hemlock with his right hand as he points to heaven with his left. He has chosen death over exile, defiant that no thinker should fear death because the soul is immortal. He'd been convicted of corrupting the minds of the youth. What a messy sentence that is. Let me just pull up that painting so people know what the death of Socrates looks like. Get a nice image of it here. Or no, this is a clearer one. There you go. That's the death of Socrates. Socrates right there in his defiance. Also comparing Yi to Socrates. No. Flat no. This is how Tim Pool's kitchen looked in the moments after Yi walked off Timcast IRL on Cyber Monday. Nearly 100,000 people watched live as Yi left the studio 20 minutes into the conversation. Pool continued the show upstairs as Yi stood like the eye at the center of a hurricane. Milo Yiannopoulos, the then Yi24 campaign manager, followed Yi out of the studio and joined him in the kitchen, hunched over the flat-screen TV, listening intently to Pool as the show went on without them. Yiannopoulos' body language suggested disappointment, trying to gauge Pool's reaction while also possibly thinking about whether or not the night was salvageable. Nick Fuentes, the Yi24 communications director, later joined the scene in the kitchen, leaving 3 empty seats in the studio. The internet was blowing up as Yi stood there freakishly nonchalant. You know how people stand there freakishly nonchalant? I always thought nonchalant carried with it an air of indifference and calmness, but this was freakish, you guys. It was a freakishly nonchalant stance he took. He wasn't looking at his phone. He wasn't smiling, but he didn't appear angry either. He looked straight ahead, past Milo, and seemed satisfied. You might be able to tell this is coming from the perspective of someone who is a fan of Yi, and that's going to be very, very apparent. I decided to walk up to Yi. Aside from his stillness, the rest of the place felt like the inside of a hornet's nest. I walked past the armed guards, which we're only finding about now, I guess, and said, "I believe in you, and I believe a Yi presidency is inevitable." He didn't say anything, but he looked at me seriously and seemed to take an interest. So I continued. This is this guy's interview standing. White flash. Yeah. Sometimes my browser does that. Um, so he takes an interest. His style of interviewing is to just be so deferential and so fawning to his subjects. It's God, it's embarrassing. I don't know how he can stand to publish this. You have faced rejection and mockery in every industry you've been a part of, and every time you fall out of the good graces of the public eye, you find a way to skyrocket past all expectations and succeed. That's why I refuse to discount what you're doing. I'd love to see you go back on IRL and tell everyone else why they should believe in you too. He nodded as if to say that all sounded correct, except for the last part. His decision was final. I was totally on board until he told me to go back to Tim Pool. Wow. Then I told him I enjoyed him making Trump look weak at the Thanksgiving dinner at Mar-a-Lago. Watching Trump stumble over himself on Truth Social seemed uncharacteristic. Yi laughed at that. Aren't they best friends? I'm going to cover this guy who I just basically, dropped to my knees in worship as a god. And he decided that he would take me on as like a little disciple. God, it's so sad. It is so sad. I was overdosing on adrenaline, so I can't remember everything he said to me in that moment. But he brought up the media always taking things out of context, how he recently faced jail time for tax issues, and then made a joke. I think it was a joke about making out with Ivanka Trump. He laughed, I laughed, then he walked around the kitchen and took some cookies off the counter. He's so specific with his fawning praise for Yi, but as soon as he actually gets to saying, like, what did he actually say to me? It's all this like, I think he said this. Someone said skip to the part where they start kissing. I don't know. I feel this way this is written, I get the impression that Cashman is gonna try going for it, and he's gonna be like, whoa, dude, you're just here to like make me look good and maybe kiss my feet or something. This is not a relationship of equals. I asked him about his opera, Mary, specifically one section of music that I said I wish he'd release officially. He asked me to pull it up on YouTube. Then he told Fuentes to take my name and number. I told him I wish the show had gone differently, and that I am grateful for his art. I didn't tell him that I'd been writing about his campaign for the past week, that I reviewed his music for Pitchfork, nor that I'd been writing a novel that happens to feature him as the protagonist. It all seemed like too much, too real. He wrote about Yi. Oh my god. Oh, that is glorious. You can tell what a fanboy is if he literally is writing a book about him as the protagonist. It's so good. I thought of the Philip Roth quote. The idea is to turn flesh and blood into literary characters, and literary characters into flesh and blood. My love for Yi's music is borderline obsessive, so much so that when the doctor told my wife that I thought our daughter's time of birth was 808, my wife said to me, well, I bet you like that. Oh man, that is just so sad. This is like the saddest thing. I wish he had told Ye that. It's like, I'm writing a novel, and you're going to be the hero of the novel. Oh, wow. This is pretty cringe. Oh, wow. I can't think of a single public figure I've ever been so appreciative of that I've literally written fan fiction about them. But even if I did do that, and I guess, write about whatever you want to write about, I would never want to tell that person, and I would be the last person you'd want interviewing said person. Because it's too smitten, too in love with this guy thank you for the word, by the way. Reviewer 54, smitten is perfect. Imagine what he's written about Carrie Lake behind her back. I don't know if he loves Carrie Lake the way he loves Yi. So yes, my admiration for his art is borderline insane. There's no denying that. Back when I was a professor teaching English 101, did he leave his professorship? He better update his LinkedIn. I would have my students debate who was more relevant, Shakespeare or Kanye West. So with all this in mind, it's understandable that you might think I'm either the worst or best person to be reporting on Yi at this point in time. It's the worst. I think you're the worst person to be doing this. But I'm glad he's like clearing up his biases right off the bat. It's like, by the way, I think this man is like almost or maybe more relevant than Shakespeare, and I'm also writing a fanfic about him. So we're not going to get an objective report here. Uh, whew. I think this is the part. No, wait, I read a little further on. And if you think this is outrageous, oh man, there's a part coming up. Brace yourself right now. Brace yourself right now. It's going to be wild. I do dis- I do detest celebrity culture, though. I have no desire to meet celebrities. The only famous people I'd want to meet are dead writers and artists. Ye just happen to be the one living artist that I connect with on a major level. That said, I still couldn't bring myself to ever watch the Kardashians. Okay, so he's not that. He's not just a celebrity chaser, guys. Also, he's the only one. Like, I feel like I can connect to artists, excuse me, living in the present day much more easily than ones in the past because they're dead and their work is very from a specific time and context. Occasionally, there is work that speaks to what seems to be a universal or like transcends the time they were written in. I think that's totally true and great and cool. But if you can't find artists to connect with in the present, like their work, I don't know. It's like you're either not connecting with them in art in a meaningful way or just not giving it a chance, or I don't know. It's a weird thing to say. um Someone asked, are there any memorable Yi lines? I don't know. The only things I remember from what I have read of this article, which is about the first, I don't know, 10% of it, maybe the first 20% I read, it's all just him. It's all just Cashman fawning over this. Before Yi arrived at the studio, I had just spent the day trying to convince colleagues why he could actually become president. Like it or not, anytime he said he's going to do something, he does it. And my disgust with American politics runs so deep, I'm willing to throw support behind a campaign that could drastically shift the socio-political landscape. I think, for the better. I'm looking for something to completely root out the system. He doesn't have political experience, but I don't think we need someone who has that on the resume. We need a radical visionary who has operated at the highest levels of business. That's Yi. Okay, so he's making his case why he thinks Yi would be good. But what he said here is he could actually become president. None of this speaks to the likelihood. This just is him saying he thinks it's a good idea. This is the sort of thing an editor should be like, your premise here doesn't match what you're talking about. Like, you're saying it's a good idea, but you open with saying he could actually become president. You should actually describe in practical terms how he would get the votes, how he would run the campaign. It's nothing, right? This is just fluff. Uh, okay. People should have learned a long time ago not to write Yi off as unstable, mentally ill, racist, white supremacist, or anti-Semitic. From merely a fan's perspective, your worst insults only help to fuel the man's determination. He has yet to prove, to me anyways, that he is any of those things. In his messaging always the clearest? Is his messaging always the clearest? No, but I believe he comes from a good place. On July 23rd, 2022, I posted an image on Instagram that said, telling the universe one day I will interview Kanye West. Now, on November 28th, 2022, I was walking him out to his getaway car as IRL went on without him. We shook hands, I thanked him again for the music, and he told me I should fly to LA. Ooh, oh, it really is embarrassing, isn't it? Just the absolute fawning behavior here. But he manifested it, you know? He said, I will interview Kanye West one day. And lucky for him, Kanye West's profile has fallen so low that he's now taking interviews from Timcast IRL. Also keep in mind, he said he's not unstable, mentally ill, racist, white supremacist, or anti-Semitic. We'll be evaluating a few of those very shortly. 4 days later, at 4 in the morning. Why is it 4 in the morning again? This guy's day starts at 4 all the time. I get the okay from Ye's team, saying that he has approved my coming out to interview him. On my way to the airport, Ye was live on InfoWars with Alex Jones, Nick Fuentes, and Alexander. Ye had on the black Balenciaga mask. It looked like Ye and his traveling circus had hijacked InfoWars. Friends were texting me what he was saying to Alex. They said I'd never seen Jones look so uncomfortable. They said they'd never seen Jones look so uncomfortable. I like Hitler, he said before a break, and it felt like a tectonic plate was shifting beneath the culture. Then, I love Jews and I love Nazis, and then Nazis did good things too. those weren't all said in a row. Um, of course, I feel like the "I like Hitler" part. You know, remember when he said he wasn't anti-Semitic? It just seems like the "I like Hitler" part or the Nazis did good things, that would kind of tell you something, right? Of course, he's trying to phrase it as some broad Christian love. He loves everybody, but no, he's specifically saying Nazis did good things too. Whew. It seemed like every word he was saying was beginning to trend on Twitter. It also started to feel like I wasn't going to get a meeting in LA. Ye was wiling. I messaged Tim Pool, who'd given me the chance to fly out and report on Ye's campaign for Timcast, and said, "It feels like I'm flying into a war zone." He's going to Los Angeles to interview Ye. He asked if I still wanted to go. I seriously considered turning the car around. Tim's reported from actual war zones, and now he's hitting me up in an almost brotherly way, like, if you don't want to get in the middle of all this, I understand. But I said, I'm willing. First of all, Tim's reporting on war zones is very funny because, according to his coworkers, he was afraid to leave his hotel room. And when he did, he would go to the opposite end of the city where there was no threat of any violence. And to be fair, war zones are scary, right? No one should feel comfortable walking into gunfire. But if it's your job to cover it as a reporter, and then later on you talk about how brave you were reporting in war zones, when you really just hide in your hotel room, that's some cowardly, phony stuff right there. Uh, Although Cashman sounds even worse. Uh, and also, this isn't Tim writing this, The Boring Tiger. This is someone who works for him. And yeah, he doesn't think that about uh, Kanye West. People were talking about it at the terminal. Everyone is on their phones, and my confidence in meeting Ye worsened. Close friends and family hit me up saying that they finally had enough. This is getting too dark, one said. Another said, I know you're a Ye fan, but it's probably time to jump ship. No one other than Tim, my wife, my editors, Ye, and his small team that knew I was heading out to LA. Ooh, I like how he's like undercover in the dark of night, going out to Los Angeles to talk to a wealthy celebrity. It sure sounds dangerous. It's just like going to a war zone, you guys. It's just like reporting in Yemen, except you're in Los Angeles with Ye. One fraud called and said, "You're probably the last Ye fan on Earth." It certainly felt like it, but longtime fans of Ye had become used to this feeling. This felt different. This was next level total war. My Jewish mother wasn't too thrilled. I don't like what he's saying, she told me as I sat in the terminal. Does he know you were raised Jewish? I think this is where I stopped reading when I first looked at this article, because just like, wow. Wow. Think about all the fawning, just the abject, embarrassing, tripping over himself to just to laud Kanye West. And we find out this dude, I don't know if he still identifies as Jewish, but he was raised that way. His mother is Jewish. I mean, I don't know, words can't express this just sad state of affairs. So we're going to go on into uncharted territory here. Yeah. But I have always admired people like Johnny Rotten, Marilyn Manson, Andy Kaufman, David Lynch, Alejandro Jodorowsky, and Pablo Picasso. A couple of those people are still alive. Johnny Rotten and Marilyn Manson. I think David Lynch is still alive. Yeah, David Lynch is alive. So I don't know. Remember what he said? He didn't connect to any modern artists. Also, Johnny Rotten's a phony. I do like the Sex Pistols. I like some of their music, but they're like fake punk. They were developed by a clothing label. Look it up, people. Chill Goblin is a good video. Chumbawamba is more punk than the Sex Pistols. I've always looked up to the most transgressive artists, agitators, disruptors, and people that constantly shove impossible conversations into the mainstream consciousness. But this felt like Ye had finally found a way to unite nearly everyone against him, and I was about to board a plane to possibly meet him. Just a flash of white there. No one that was with Ye was texting me back. I thought about not boarding the flight. It felt like it'd be a waste of time to fly to LA and not get a story. Wow. Someone said this guy genuinely, unironically, legitimately, literally needs help. Maybe. I saw he had an appearance on Timcast IRL, which he just seemed like an average, normal guy, just kind of dopey and not very bright, I guess. His writing, though, is, yeah, it's something. It's something. I don't know if you can necessarily say he needs some certification, but perhaps some people in his life, the ones who are texting him saying that it's all going bad, uh, that might be a good idea, right? Everyone was saying he's insane. From people I know to well known pundits. From people I know to well known pundits. That's a very bad way of phrasing that. I wondered if I was insane for thinking otherwise. Um, do we dare click on the link? Yes, we do. Ari, you flying out? I can authorize you that now because Ye already said yes. I guess this is just a record of him saying he got the okay to do the interview. As out of pocket as Ye sounded to everyone, I still had this ridiculous sense that Ye was speaking in a language that no one else was understanding. He might have been saying wild shit, but it seemed like there was more to it. I had to consider whether or not spending 2 decades defending him had calloused me to what should be plain and simple criticism. I felt like I saw something bigger operating behind the words he was choosing. You can sort of see him kind of talking himself into it, can't you? That everything's not as it seems, that Ye's okay, but regardless, everything felt dismal. But the zeitgeist reflects that chaos. Is chaos is dismal? Is chaos dismal? I wouldn't say that. I don't know. What is. Let's not get wrapped up in English here. I've been vocal about how the COVID era ushered in an existential renaissance. Widespread nihilism sank its teeth into the culture at every level. I don't even know what that means. Widespread nihilism sank its teeth into the culture at every level. Wow. I'm not sure this guy has his fingerprint on the culture to say that nihilism is everywhere. I felt like there's been a lot of different things that have come with COVID. But it's an existential renaissance, everybody. I aim to see the current system destroyed so that American citizens can flourish. Okay? True unity cannot take place until that happens. We are in a doom loop. We are a country of poor, depressed, suicidal, drugged up, overweight, hopeless, divided, angry people. Of course, not everyone. But I argue that those negative qualities are the ones that the future will remember this era for the most. Wow. God, I'm starting to get bummed out just reading this. Are things really that bad? Do you all feel like you are poor, depressed, suicidal, drugged up, overweight, hopeless, divided, and angry? But it is giving us an existential renaissance, though, isn't it? So, you got to take the good with the bad. President Biden promised unity at his inauguration, and within a few years, he gave a speech on a stage designed like a Nazi fever dream to label half of the country as domestic terrorists. Wait, are Nazis bad now? I don't know. Was Ye a fan of that speech? There are people in power who despise their constituents, left and right. This country is submissive to a uniparty. Nancy Pelosi is just Mitch McConnell in heels. Very few in power want what's best for us. It's all power plays being made by greedy thugs who are in office for way too long. The only way out of this disaster is find a way to unity, but even unity has worked into a controversial idea. Wow. So let's step back. This is just really just ridiculous stuff. Where does one even begin? This complete nullification of the left or right paradigm here is pretty wild. And I thought this was going to be an article about Kanye West, but now it's just Cashman given a political spiel, one that honestly feels like it's completely detached from reality. And it doesn't really say anything of substance. I think that's the thing that really annoys me, because there's real critiques for power structures, and he's just saying, oh, we need to tear it all down and unify together behind a common goal. What is that common thing? I'm not sure. And what does it mean to tear everything down? Does it like vote the bad people out of office? Because he was just, remember that article with Carrie Lake, and he was like saying she could have fixed everything. We just needed Carrie. And now Kanye West, if we elect him into president, that'll save everything. It's not really, it's not really a structural critique. It's very much a bad apples kind of thing. And it's also really vacuous, and something that really annoys me about a lot of the critiques you see on places like Timcast, where they never really criticize the system and how it's set up and how it creates certain incentives in a meaningful way. A lot of it does boil down to, if we just hired the right people, everything would be okay. And by the right people, they mean like these completely outrageous fringe types like Carrie Lake. And there's like, this weird perception or presumption that their beliefs are somehow more common than they actually are. Like, Cashman knows he's alone in supporting Yi, but he thinks Yi is some kind of unifier? It doesn't really make sense, does it? Okay, let's keep going. I wrote this just a few days before meeting Yi at the IRL studio. A radical, eccentric visionary is the only way forward. If we don't root out this system, we will be stuck in this nightmare where no one can work together and everyone hates each other until the whole thing finally, officially collapses. I do not want that. As ridiculous as this might sound, I believe Yi could fill that void. After the InfoWars show, the chances of that seem to drop exponentially. Oh, you think so? But I still had this psychotic optimism. It's probably a personal defect to keep this kind of hope in the face of doom, but it's how I keep going. I would suggest that your hope is misplaced. Find other things to hope for if you hope that Yi is going to just swoop in and save the day. Actual admission there, psychotic. Psychotic optimism is a very fun phrase. That's what I kind of like about someone who has this idea that they think they're a great writer, because they'll take chances with their writing and usually fall on their face, and it's at least entertaining, whereas some people are a little too wary and will just write very conservatively, and you'll get something that's very boring and bland and straightforward. So I'm glad this guy, he's swinging for the fences and constantly striking out, which is so much more entertaining than someone who's like trying to get a ground ball to left field so he can get to first base on a single. Does this fulfill his need for attention? No, because this is just a goofy stream. We're just having some fun here, dude. He's already being published by a channel that's much bigger than mine. And I don't think anyone's going to suddenly believe this guy or start following this guy. Although, if you are watching the stream and thinking, I should follow this guy, he seems like he's a good writer. I don't know if I could have helped you realize the truth about this being bad, I guess. Anyway, we're all having some fun here, I hope. But if it's not your bag, that's totally fine. I'm not demanding you laugh at this with me. And someone wants to follow him for his comedy because he's objectively funny. Yeah, I get that. There's an irony there, I guess. I guess the reason I wanted to share this is because when I was going over my video, I briefly talked about one of his articles, and I feel like it was so funny to me and so amusing. I wanted to go over it in detail in a stream, so we're all just having a bit of fun here. All right. Something I think I have in common with Yi is his willingness to alienate himself from everyone. Oh, that's sad if he believes he's on a crucial mission, despite what the world thinks. He will go full speed. I've experienced that as well, to much lesser degrees, over the last few years by speaking out against medical segregation, lockdowns, and forced vaccinations. So he is the counterculture now. Would I say that Timcast is a popular conservative YouTuber? Obviously. Obviously. He is popular, conservative, and a YouTuber. Before I boarded the flight, Yi passed his phone around the InfoWars studio, allowing all the permaban people like Jones, Fuentes, and Alexander to tweet from his account. Some of the most hated people on the planet were subverting the conversation through one of the most popular person's phone. Wait, from one of the most popular person's phone. Okay. Even if it all looked mad to most people, I still saw something worth talking about. I saw a chance for radical forgiveness, leading to radical unity. Or maybe I'm just crazy. I don't know what to say. I feel like he's just kind of repeating himself. Like, this crazy stuff was going on, but I had hope. Maybe I'm the crazy one. Or maybe I'm not. I feel like that's all this article is. My computer doesn't like this article. I took my seat on the plane, and as I waited to take off, I saw a headline about a quantum computer simulating a wormhole, and everything started to make perfectly absurd sense. What? Maybe the only thing that is the only sane thing in this world is that it's completely crazy. It's the illusion of depth here, the illusion of deep introspection. We flew 500 miles per hour from DC to LA, and it didn't feel fast enough. I have no idea what that means. Here's a fun fact about me. I never feel like planes are fast enough, but only in the last hour. I can sit on an 18-hour flight, and I'm totally fine until hour 17, and then I get very antsy and feel like I need to get off the plane. And if I'm on a 1-hour flight, I immediately feel that way. I'm like, why aren't we there yet? I thought this would be 1 hour, but we're not there yet. It's just a weird thing that happens to me. So I hadn't slept in 4 days. I was a giant eyeball flying over LA. I don't know if you can stay awake for 4 days. Maybe if. Also, why is he not sleeping for 4 days? Oh man, this is getting a little scary. The cultural pendulum was swinging back and forth across the nation like an axe. The simulation was on fire. I don't know what he's talking about. The cultural pendulum was swinging back and forth? The Wi-Fi on board wasn't working, so I had no way of keeping touch with anyone during the flight. I kept imagining Yi and his crew leaving the InfoWars studio, like that scene where Heath Ledger's Joker leans his head out the window of a cop car racing through Gotham. Oh man. I'm glad we got a Dark Knight reference here. The moment we landed, I found out Yi had just landed in Miami. I was here for the weekend and still not hearing from anyone close to Yi. I figured that was that. It rained that Friday. The sewers were overflowing on Hollywood Boulevard, and I saw zero sun. So he still hasn't interviewed him? Oh my god. Also, why hasn't he slept in 4 days? I'm wondering about that. I paced around LA trying to manifest the interview how I manifested Cyber Monday's encounter. The editor-in-chief of Timcast News, Cassandra McDonald, had some connections with other people who were also with Yi. She sent me one text that made it sound like it was off the table. Later that evening, I got a text from Fuentes. He sent me an address and asked if I could show up on Saturday afternoon. By the way, Cassandra McDonald used to go by the name Cassandra Fairbanks. I think she got married. She used to work for a white supremacist website. I think her dad ran one or something. So when she says she's got people who are in close touch with Yi, that really says a lot, doesn't it? I mean, he's already hanging out with Nick Fuentes in Minneapolis, so we're pretty much there on the white supremacist tip, aren't we? It's taking forever to get to the interview, though, doesn't it? Someone said this guy wants to be Harley Quinn. He really does. He wants Kanye to be the Joker, and he wants to be his little Harley Quinn. Oh man, with all the horrible abusive connotations that relationship carries with it. Ugh. My Lyft driver told me he couldn't believe how much the neighborhood had changed where I was staying. He was a Hispanic dude in his 30s. He told me the 18th Street gang used to run this place. He remembered walking home from school one afternoon and some gangsters beat him up real badly. One of the guys swung a 2x4 over his back. His textbook saved his life, he said. He dropped me at a big concrete building. Tall pine trees lined the street. Security let me in and I'm greeted by Fuentes. He wore a black hoodie and white Yeezys. He said I could hang in the conference room with 2 long wooden tables. They were preparing Yi in another spot for an interview with Gavin McInnes. I guess this is him? Interviewing him? Interviewing Yi. Wow. Isn't that so artful? He's just like... He put his stuff down. I guess that's a table. It really blends in with the floor, though. But, like, where's the furniture? Man. That's kind of sad if this is how Yi lives in an empty place. It's a conference room, but... I don't know. There's something very depressing about this image. It's haunting and sad. Also a little slanted. Looks like a prison, looks like a homeless shelter. Yeah, I guess so. Kind of. Looks like both of those things. I don't think the black and white is doing it any favors. The space was minimally designed. Oh, yeah, you don't say. Lots of natural light. There was Yeem 24 merch and some dictionaries on a shelf. The building reminded me of something Le Corbusier would have designed. Something out of his proposed Radiant City, a dream community he never realized at large. I wondered which Yi I'd be meeting. Mask on or mask off? Happy or hostile? The Jewish media had dominated the conversation. I don't like lumping any one group by race or religion into a problem, despite some cliches being true. Oh man. Oh wow. You just went for it, dude. But I didn't come here to debate you. Don't want to challenge him on that, I guess. I came here to have a conversation. I wanted him to speak at length on anything, but especially his vision for the future. One of my favorite E-lines is, I'm living in the future, so the present is my past. My presence is a present. Kiss my ass. Someone just said, thank you, B. Parker. Then why do it? If you want him to speak about anything, why are you there? No one needs you there. Just give him your microphone, say, talking to this, and I'm just publish this on my website. That's, oh man. Oh, if you're, I think a good journalist or a good interviewer has some idea in mind. Like, even if you're just going to see where the conversation takes you to go, you should be wanting to find out additional information. You want to like find out what motivates this man. What is he interested in? What is, does he really have a cohesive worldview? Is he being controlled by like grifters or like, oh man. And the thing that he's not going to challenge him on the idea of the Jewish media, oh, that is so cowardly. Oh, even if it's just to understand why he believes that and what has led him to believe that. Oh, God. Okay. Again, my computer fights with every. I should close some of these tabs. That'll probably help free up a little RAM here. Eventually, Fuentes said they were ready for me. We're, not even halfway through, but it's taken a while to get here. I walked further into the building and I see Yi leaned against a wall, mask in hand. He's got on the same outfit from the InfoWars interview. When he saw me, he smiled and said, I was just asking about you. I told him, I always wanted the simulation to burn, and I'm glad it's you who's doing it. Oh, wow. We immediately start talking about obscene art, degenerate art. A woman standing with us said art suffered during World War II. But I said, what about Picasso? Well, I mean, Picasso was making a lot of great art before World War II. Yi seemed interested in the conversation about the relationship between art, war, and God, and what degenerate art meant. We took seats at a giant table where Nick and Yi sat across from me. Also, art suffered during World War II, probably because a lot of people and artists were killed. Yeah. I brought up my favorite painting, The Garden of Earthly Delights by Hieronymus Bosch. You're Catholic, right? I asked Fuentes. He said yes. I get in debates with Catholics about whether certain art is objectively or subjectively good or bad. Yikes. I feel like anyone who critiques art should know that it's entirely subjective when it comes to good or bad. Okay, Fuentes wasn't familiar with the Garden of Earthly Delights, so I described the painting to him. Let's actually pull it up here. I think I know which painting this is referring to. Yeah, I've definitely seen this one. I'm not that well versed in like a lot of visual arts though. Can I get a bigger one? There we go. It's a very busy image. Oh my God. They really don't want us zooming in on this, huh? Anyway, you got a sense of it. It's like a beautiful triptych from the 1500s about the fall of man, and some people think it's degenerate. I think it's beautiful. The third panel is insane. It's all hell broke loose. The middle panel is depravity, and the first panel is Jesus with Adam and Eve in the garden. But when it was made, some people said, this is disgusting. Yi was finishing a conversation on his phone when a woman joined us at the table. I'm glad he included that, I guess. I would have been interested to hear Fuentes' response. Okay. Christianity has a soft spot for the transgressive, she said. Who is this woman, by the way? A woman joined us at the table. Yi going on Alex Jones was transgressive in the most Christian way. She mentioned his idea of extending love to even the most evil humans in history, as in the latest Yi-ism, I love Hitler, from 2 days prior. Wow. So I don't think someone who literally denied the Holocaust was doing it as purely sort of as like some kind of broad objective love of all humans, right? When he is denying the Holocaust and saying the Nazis did good things and talking about how much he likes Hitler, it's not a demonstration of Christian faith so much as it is just anti-Semitism. I think it's fair to say that Christianity was the major disruption. To be Christian is to be a disruptor. It might not seem like that these days, but a lot of people forget the faith. Christianity was at one point the counterculture, I said. Yeah, 2,000 years ago. It hasn't been the counterculture for a long time. Someone asked who Yi is. Yi is Kanye West. That's what he goes by these days. And when Yi ended the phone call, he asked me how long I was in town. Until Monday morning, I said. So we're not in a rush, he asked. I shook my head no. His phone is constantly lighting up. The clothing designs he's working on are laid out across the floor. He seems to be constantly working on something all at once. Assistants come up with questions. He takes business calls. There's a good mix of natural and soft synthetic light in the headquarters. So what initially felt like a labyrinth started to feel like a monastery, despite the rush of energy that Yi displays. Whew. I feel like God is forcing me to stop having sex like Tesla did. Tesla stopped at 40. They call that semen retention, the woman said. Now, interviews can get off to odd starts. I think it's perfectly valid to put that quote in bold because it is just, wow. It is a wow moment, and I so want to hear how it's responded to because it's such a bizarre thing to say. And someone asked if there are two streams going on right now. It's just one. Don't worry, there's only one stream going on, and you're here. If you're seeing this, you're here. All right. Do you know who collected Tesla's stuff when he died? I asked Yi. That's what you asked? His semen? Yi said and laughed. Nah, I said, still laughing, like his blueprints for his work. It was Donald Trump's uncle, John Trump. Yi looked interested. I feel like I would have asked a question about the stop having sex and semen retention, but now we're talking about Trump. There's a wild theory about Trump being a time traveler because of his uncle having access to the Tesla material, I said, hoping that if he did become president, he would look into this. Oh my God. You think Tesla had a little time traveling going on? He asked. I think anything's possible, I said. He saw things about this world that no one else saw except to see. He thought the pyramids were something way different than what we think they are today. Is he trying to like out crazy Kanye West here? Is that what this is going to be? Because I am so here for this interview if that's what it's going to be. An assistant came to ask about lunch as I was to go in on Tesla theories. Wow. So the simulation shattered on InfoWars, I said. This was the new White Lives Matter shirt, but times 1,000. Oh, okay. Yi looked as if he wanted to hear me expand on the idea. When I say simulation, I don't think we're like in a zeros and ones kind of simulation. I think base reality is God's reality. And then the government, the media, they overlay this false reality on top of us. And that's why I'm okay with anyone questioning everything. Even the things we are not supposed to be questioned, even the things that are not supposed to be questioned. Everyone should be free to question whether or not they want whatever they want. Because we've seen the CIA and the FBI actually engineer false narratives. I think the establishment, with the help of the corporate press, has created an alternate reality. Question everything apart from Kanye is a very good point. When I say things like this, I'm thinking of everything from the experts erasing vaccine side of, oh God, here we go again. Uh, Conversations, dozens of feds plotted. Okay, the Governor Whitmer thing annoys me because it wasn't dozens of feds helping the plot. It was one person who was an informant who told the FBI about it. Then they sent in a bunch of feds to infiltrate the organizations that were planning to kidnap Governor Whitmer. Right? This wasn't a Fed plot. Oh God, to Jussie Smollett, they'll never forgive Jussie Smollett. Oh, to the Covington kids who, oh God, again, the only people who still remember them. To the P tape, to the good people on both sides. Speed running all the talking points there. I turned to Fuentes and said, I mean, you've talked a little bit recently about what Japan did to China during World War II. That's some of the most messed up stuff ever. That was very messed up. And the American government gave those people amnesty and took their information for doing things like cutting people open and making them eat their own organs. What? They took their information? It's evil. So it's stuff like that why I've always wanted to see the system get destroyed. The evil things that happen in the dark, okayed by governments, even encouraged. So to me, I think it makes sense that what you're doing, it makes sense what you're doing, and the peoples are pissed off as they should be. But I also think things can get better. But if you break the simulation, how do you reimagine things? How do you reimagine it making America better? I don't even know what to make of that question. But the American government gave those people amnesty? I don't even. Is he trying to say like the American government tried to cover up the war crimes of Japan? Because the Japanese government did a lot of that. Um, but yeah, oh God, this is. I start with these vertically integrated communities, he said. Like Steve Jobs worked on the iPhone. We're going to save the world with this. The vertically integrated communities are a form of an iPhone, but it's a community approach with a design language like an Apple team would approach a phone. We're God's favorite creation. We're God's iPhone. If God was Steve Jobs, we'd be the iPhone. And also, Steve Jobs looked like an iPhone, he said and laughed. But it's like, what do we need to maximize our being? Water, food, shelter, medicine, and education are the five main elements. And people always correct me. They say, I gotta say energy too. Okay, but all those things are energy. We're the most powerful energy. All those things are the things that power us. That's why I think it's interesting, that energy conversation, because we actually don't need energy companies, he said. Speaking of Tesla, I said, this is crazy gibberish. I don't know how else to describe this. So Kanye West is just sort of gets asked a ridiculous question and he gives a ridiculous answer. So it's all to form, I guess. But honestly, if the whole interview is going to be this kind of back and forth, I don't know what I can even pull out of this, to be honest. Earth is a giant generator. There are the five elements that the 1% use to control the dynamics. That sounds like something Bernie Sanders would say, he said. I don't think Bernie Sanders would say that five elements are controlled by the 1%. That's the old school Occupy Wall Street days, I said. But there's still truth to that still. Thank you, Maddie the Moody. Wait, so this isn't Cashman's Yi fanfic novel? This is supposed to be a real grown-up news article? P.S. Keep it up, Jose. Yeah. Thank you for the support. And this is meant to be a real news article. I don't know how. This interview is... I wish it was on video because it would be easier than reading this. Earlier you mentioned that someone is asking in the chat that he should ask more pointed questions. And isn't this true of Jon Stewart when he was hosting The Daily Show? I mean, I think I literally made that point in one of my videos when Jon Stewart was on his talking on on Crossfire, and he was like saying he would deflect by saying he was a comedy show, and I would say, you're not just a comedy show if people are coming to you for news. And the thing is, Jon Stewart did ask pointed questions sometimes, certainly more pointed than any of this. And he still had the defense of being a comedian, right? Like, I do believe if you're just gonna have a jokey interview, sure, you can mess around and not be expected to be like some hard-hitting journalist. But yeah, he did actually challenge his guests on occasion. I think he should have been more upfront of the fact that he was sometimes reporting, or not reporting news, but contributing to the body of news, I guess. Um, and this guy is not doing that. I haven't seen there hasn't been a single challenging question in anything we've read from him so far. This is just sort of sad fawning. Whew. All right, let's continue the article. So how do we run the country? He asked rhetorically. One thing that people talk about is ballot harvesting, and that's why the Democrats have been doing what the Democrats have been doing to win the elections. People need this approach that we have. We need to use America as a platform to show people where the world should be in the 2000s, period, in the future. We need to push things into the future. There are so many things around us that are held back by capitalism, by greed, and by fear. You take away greed of capitalism, fear, and only push forward serving God. Everyone's got to get out of their way. Like when I do these interviews and I say, well, Nick, what do you feel? You know what? I don't know if I can keep reading the Kanye West stuff, to be honest. Also, like, he uses a slur I'm not going to use. I'm currently like having a moment where I'm questioning how much more of this article I can read because we're not even halfway through, and it is absolutely bonkers. And I feel like with Yi, we're just going to be getting these random detached rants. Um, Honestly, I was more interested in Cashman's fawning over Yi than I am about hearing Yi himself uh, go on his own rants. Do we have any more of that? Because I feel like this interview is not super interesting. Well, this is bolded. I was about to go into an observation I had what they're saying versus my childhood, but someone sent Yi the clip of Elon Musk saying he wanted to punch him. What? Did that happen? Um, that's a fun thing to bold. Yi play the audio. I personally wanted to punch Kanye, so that was definitely inciting me to violence. That's not cool. I don't really trust Elon, I said. I like what he's doing to promote free speech, but I don't like the Neuralink. You mentioned Ray Kurzweil. I think those guys are anti-human. They want to put stuff in your brain and make you immortal. That's severing you from God. I don't think people should be immortal. Unfortunately, as much as I love life, I don't want to live forever. And it's the saddest thing to think about because I want my kids to live forever. But it's also like life is precious. And unfortunately, life is temporary. And that's what it makes it beautiful. And when I hear people say they want to put stuff in your brain or upload your consciousness to a computer, I'm so not into that. So we should not research it at all. Who is this woman? Who is this woman? How is she ever going to get identified? I don't know about that. I still think people should research, but that's where the problem comes in. Because how do you then restrict that? Um, God, there's like, oh no, knowledge is. Oh, this is getting really anti-Semitic here. The Jews have high IQs, he said. Oh man. Oh man. Is there going to get a part where Cashman admits that he was raised Jewish? I feel like that would change the tone of the conversation. But I don't know. I'm feeling a little fatigued by this right now because it is a long interview. I'll just go to the bolded sections. Republican, he said, because no one is explaining how we could win as an independent. So I guess he would be running as a Republican. I'm also super not interested to hear what Fuentes has to say, to be honest. And I guess he's being interviewed a lot. God, the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, of course. Um, Again, it's just this interview is not good. And that's all it is. It's just a transcription of the interview. Oh man, this is boring and lazy. Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe not long after I got to my room, I sent Yi a text with a link to a Thomas Sowell video and another link to one of my all-time favorite pieces of music, the Sacred Harp's field recording of the last words of Copernicus. Then he sent me the location of the church Bible studies at 9 a.m. Okay. God. This is, you know what's crazy though? This is only part one. There's a second one. Um, part two. And this is also long, isn't it? Oh man. Some nice photography there. Uh, it's just more transcribing the interview. I want to see more fawning. Does he fawn on him? I was alone in the room. The sun had set. Doors open to the ocean. It started to rain, and I thought about something my taxi driver told me. The droughts are so bad in LA that when it rains, everybody's happy. They open their windows and open their hands and catch the rain. So I just sat there with my notebook, waiting in Yee's version of the Oval Office, hovering over the Pacific, thinking of heaven and how we're carried through life on fate, free will, risk, eternity, coincidence, and blessings, and joy, trying to think of the best words we can all sing together in harmony. Doesn't that just fill you with something? A lot of nothing, actually. I gotta say, the first third of that article was just wild and a lot of fun to read, but as soon as it got to the interview, I was just not into it. Not into it at all. So, I think that's about all we should do for Shane Cashman, to be honest. someone has, did someone dose this guy? I think when you're awake for 4 days in a row, it just that's just who you are now. Uh, okay, so wow, almost 3 hours. I read 1.5 articles, not even half the way through the second one, and it took nearly 3 hours. That doesn't that tell you a lot about this dude and what he's and how long-winded his articles are, but also not very interesting. Okay, I guess there's a few other things I should talk about. The new video is going to be coming out soon in a couple of days. I still have to watch a revised version. The one that went up for patrons, I felt like was a bit too long in certain sections, so I've cut out a couple of minutes. Uh, so the new version that's coming out is going to be a little tighter. It is a look at Timcast IRL. You will get to see Shane Cashman in person. I think I have like one like 10-second clip of him saying something when he was on the show because it made me laugh, and I read a few of my favorite excerpts from that first article we looked at. But it's mostly about Tim Pool and his like goons who hang out with him. Um, Someone just said about how boring that show is, and it truly is boring. But don't worry, you're not gonna have to. It's not gonna be like watching a whole episode. The video itself is only gonna be like about 50 minutes. Yeah, I just have to check out the revised version and see if it is what I want it to be. Uh, in other news, I was curious: do people actually want uh, like merch from this channel? Because someone was recently speaking to me about T-shirts, and I don't know, I haven't been nuts about the idea, but this is technically a company that's like very ethically run. It's like a workers' co-op that produces T-shirts, and if it's something people want, I can look into getting that set up. The shirts seem pretty nice, I guess, but I don't know if it's worth going into. If they're a little on the pricey side, at least in my opinion. They're like $30 or something, but I don't know. They'd have my logo on them. That'd be kind of cool. You'd be supporting the channel, which I would appreciate, and you'd also be supporting a workers co-op, which is pretty cool. Um, I've never done merch before, so this would be a first time thing. But if it's something people uh, would be interested in, I can look into it. Um, so yeah, it's a few a few things I could go into. Um, I would love to do other stuff that like for a little while I was thinking of doing like a little Blue Jay plushie or something like that. I thought that would be really cute and fun, but I couldn't get it together for a variety of reasons. Um, but maybe that could be an idea as well for the future, or like a pin, or someone just said a hat. A hat would be cool, right? Um, yeah, something cute, cool, fun. We'll see. I'll look into it further. It's funny because they would a plushie would be ideal. Maybe I should talk to a friend of mine because a friend of mine does make these like handcrafted things. To be honest, the design she came up with, I just wasn't nuts about. Maybe I'll ask her to um, come up with something better. I don't know. It wasn't that bad. It just wasn't exactly to my taste. And I also don't know like what her schedule's like, if she could produce a bunch of them, right? Someone says, I don't want to run afoul of the Toronto Blue Jays. You can't copyright a bird. And my logo was literally drawn by me. And I have a photo reference I can cite if they really want to take me to court. I don't think they're going to try and take me to court over that, though. Because, yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm safe there. What does their logo look like these days anyway? Not like mine, I don't think. Does it? I'm just gonna search it right now. Okay. So it looks something like that, right? That's pretty close, but I think it's different enough. Oh, I like this one. That's a really cute logo. I think that's just something a person made, though. That was my least favorite logo they did. Anyway, merch talk, right? That'll be a thing I'm considering. Someone asked if I draw often. Not often enough. I used to be so-so at it. I feel like I've probably gotten a bit rusty. That blue jay I drew for my logo is the very first time I tried to draw a blue jay. So that it's kind of special to me in that sense. I'm also toying with the idea of doing a meetup sometime. I think that would be fun, but I don't know if I'd get enough people to show up. And there's a question of like where I would even do it. Mostly thinking of that because I'll probably be traveling sometime throughout this year to a few places. I mean, I could always do one in Toronto, but I don't know. I've done a few here with other YouTubers. I've never done one on my own. I'm a little worried like no one will show up. But I don't know. Some people would, I guess. But like whenever I travel somewhere, I always feel like it might be fun to announce that and meet up with some people for like drinks just to see what like the audience is like in different parts of the world. Because I'm going to be on the West Coast for a little bit at various points this year. Once for going for a friend's wedding to somewhere, and then I'll probably be in California for VidCon. My first time going there, so that's exciting. So maybe, I don't know. Or maybe I'll just go when I go and not tell anybody about it. I have not traveled in a while, so I kind of miss it. I guess not since COVID, really. What else? Is there any sort of like info or news I wanted to cover? Does anyone have any questions? I always like asking questions on a stream. And I don't have any like material to go over anyway. I'm going to be wrapping up the stream in a few minutes. But does anyone has any like random questions about anything at all? And I can answer them. Of course, if there are no questions, then I can bounce and we can just call it a day or a night because it's getting pretty dark here. Give it a few more moments. If not, I'll go and hope you all have a wonderful time. Okay, so do I enjoy bird watching? It's cool. I don't really do it very much, but I like seeing birds. Thoughts on the UK Scotland Article 35? I'm not super familiar, but is that when the UK overruled Scotland trying to make it easier for people to change their gender? Because I thought that was messed up. UK or England imposing its transphobia onto Scotland. Has Kanye West ever referred to himself as Ye? I don't know if he speaks to himself in the third person, but that he goes by Ye. Ye, I don't know. Maybe I was saying it wrong. Do I watch TYT? Sometimes, not that often. But yeah, sometimes. It's fine. How does it feel to be the counterculture? Pretty great. Pretty great. Do I, as a Corvid named human, approve of my cat named Raven? Sure. All cats are great. I approve of all cats. Kanye's used Ye to refer to himself since 2006 as a nickname. Okay. But the thing is, he's trying to go by that entirely now. I think that was the main difference, and he just wants to go by Ye entirely. That's my understanding. It. If I've got it wrong, I'm like, I don't really follow his career. How has my day been so far? It's been pretty good. Very chill. Got a little bit of work done, but I've mostly been taking it easy today because it's a stream day, and I never work too hard on stream days because I don't want to wipe myself out before I have to talk to the people, right? Thank you. Uh, I believe he's the most commonly used word in the Bible, and in the Bible it means you. So it's I'm you, I'm us, it's us. That's something Kanye West said. Okay. I'll believe that, sure. All right. I think that's about it. It has been a lovely stream. I'm going to wrap it up here and hope you all have a great rest of your day. I am going to go make myself some food to eat. I hope you all take care of yourself. Have a great day. Look out for the video coming out in a couple of days and give it a watch because I spent some time on it and I think it'll be good. All of you have a good time and goodbye.